Okay, we are live here, landing on the rings of Saturn. Infinite Plane Saturn Day 3/9/2024. Open phones for skeptical minds, closed minds, misinformed, malinformed, malware infected minds. It's all good. You can have mind aids and you can call in. We'll talk about anything. We're not about establishing uniform agreement on anything. But we just recognize that you're entitled to your own opinions, but not your own facts. And facts are very stubborn and they're very inconvenient oftentimes. And these days they're often misrepresented. And it's one of these other words, they hate the word flat. Say anything but flat. Well, another one of these words they want to ban, more or less, well, fake. It's a big one, referring to things as fake, but also facts. Because fact, the word fact, it suggests that there's an objective standard out there, that there is a standard and there's some kind of accountability to that. All right, let's see here. We are joined by Ears Up 7 from Twitch, Diana South from DLive. I'm going to expect a flood of YouTubers here. The title of today's live stream is Nothing Burgers at Bohemian Grove. You thought they were eating children trafficked by Wayfair. But no, nothing burgers. Nothing there. Nothing at all. Nothing to see there at all. It's been a hoax this entire time, and it was used to give Alex Jones a bit of street cred. Like he infiltrated, which is, you can see there's some possibility that maybe he would have uncovered something nefarious, but it's more like it's going to Burning Man. That's pretty much it. What's the difference between the Bohemian Grove and Burning Man? We're just looking at something more or less. In fact, I would say Burning Man is probably more satanic and new agey, strange than the summer camp. And I don't know what the connection is between the owl and the bull that sacrifices or takes baby sacrifices, but I didn't get the idea by looking at the footage again that this 40-foot owl had any connection to this Canaanite deity. It was more like sacrificing one's responsibilities for a couple of weeks in the summer, and not all that different from a local Burning Man festival they do here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, Old Man Gloom, which is a Burning Man, but at the base of it you put boxes full of everyone's complaints that they, basically to the universe, and you put your complaints in a box, and these all get incinerated. So I don't know if it's all that nefarious, but we had this story, Ryan Garcia supposedly kidnapped, taken to the Bohemian Grove, abused, forced to watch other children being abused, never called the cops. No, he waited to tell Andrew Tate. Like, I'm sorry, but you claim to have witnessed the worst thing in the world. You could name names, just one, give us one. And maybe that person will talk, but you can't even do that. And now he has shut his mouth. He said he's only going to talk about boxing from here on out. So I'm wondering here, did Ryan Garcia just serve up a nothing burger to truthers to promote his next fight? Again, he had said he had proof. He then posted some video that had no connection to this. So a lot of people are thinking it's a psyop. All right, joined by Ted Striker 2112. Dinah South says happy Saturn Day. Yeah, what is the first day of spring? I know tomorrow is daylight savings, just a heads up. They're going to steal an hour from you. Holly Weird, Clockwork 113, Antichrist Denier, Psy Obstacles, Angst G, and Mango Penguins. Hey, by the way, tomorrow there's going to be a live conversation between myself, John Levon, and Fakeologist, and it's going to be a retrospective on 3/11 and what changed since then. And it should be interesting. I'm probably going to stream it on my back channel because we are talking about that year, which means we're going to be talking about the pokey. And I have not wavered from my position that I had before it even started, before the rollout of the whole lockdown agenda. I had already stated my contention that we're looking at a creation of a new concept of sin for the purposes of regulating the masses. I 100% stand by that. In fact, this Bohemian Grove conversation ties into it because you'll notice liberals don't care about it. The left doesn't care about Bohemian Grove. It's a right-wing, like horror story fantasy that they believe in. And it's interesting because it connects to the Satanic Panic, to Pizzagate, and to the moral panic that motivates the right, and their concept of the world is all based on traditional values, the traditional concept of sin, Satan. And that's why they're the ones obsessed with celebrities making 666 hand signs and doing satanic music videos. That's, to me, that's part of the Psywar here. It's about the traditional concept of sin and the new concept. And the new concept was universalized in 2020. It replaced the old. They shut down all the old religions so the new one could be observed. The new God, which is kind of interesting because the new God concept is this Gaia thing, Earth, and how it responds to man as a closed system. It will judge us. But then they bring out this new thing, which I think is something like the devil. You know, it the C-19 is the devil. It's a devil that the atheists would believe in, just like Gaia is a god that they will believe in. But I just want to point out that you'll notice the right was very resistant to the power that C-19 gave. They didn't want to worship that god or that devil. They didn't want to believe in it. They didn't want to obey it. But the left embraced it. They embraced this devil concept even more, I would say, even more passionately than they embraced their Gaia. Because they're totally hypocritical about that. But they were all too willing to adopt this new religious paradigm to where they're the ones who don't believe in sin or hell or morality, but they became Puritans overnight. They were the new saved. And that's what it became, the new saved. Being saved by these old systems like the Bible, traditional values, no, sorry, it doesn't work anymore. It won't save you from climate hell. It might save you from hell, but it's not going to save you from climate hell, which is the one that matters now. This neo-eschatology. All right, let's see what we have here in the comments. Psy-Obstacle says, this 311, the banks in crisis don't get funding from the Fed anymore. The Rona of banking possibility. Bank aids. They had it. They called it the financial contagion. Like one bank gets sick, the next bank gets sick, and they're all connected, so it's just going to go pandemic in a sense. Again, not a surprise. And remember, 3/11/2020, then you had 3/13, Friday the 13th, national emergency declared. The following Monday, 3/16/2020, was the Black Monday market crash. Dow Jones Industrial went down 3,000 points, which I correlated with 9/11, like a financial 9/11, but 3,000, very 9/11-y number. Interestingly enough, a TV show called Black Monday about the 1987 Black Monday market crash was premiering season 2 on that day. So we're having our second Black Monday market crash 33 years after the first one as season 2 of Black Monday begins. But it followed the 3/11. So this could be something. You might be onto something. There's going to be an outbreak of bank aids on, what, Monday? G33 says it's been boring at night lately, thanks. Oh yeah, this is very conspirataining. What are we going to call this? We're not conspiracy theorists, we're media critics, media analysts. But it gets boring. It does. The world itself, it's designed to make you, I think, apathetic, bored, and then, of course, they give you all kinds of ways to assuage your boredom, and usually it's directing you into their matrix. And they don't care what your real focus is. It could be video games, it could be sports, it could be war, it could be anti-war. It doesn't matter as long as you're plugged in, feeding them your loosh. See, they don't really want to take your pineal glands, as the nonners say. They actually extract your soul energy through purely mental and emotional means of manipulation. What they do with it, I'm not quite sure. I have a few theories. Mango Penguin says the new Ministry album is good. Oh yeah, Hopium for the Masses. Ministry. There's a track on there called 1-6 that actually has sound bites from Donald Trump Jr. And he's like, you can run up the hill, and you can be a hero, or you can be a zero. Instigating the QAnon mob to go run up the Capitol and seize control. By the way, Q Shaman was just on some Swedish magazine cover. Just a little while ago, someone sent, it was a magazine called DN, which is their daily newspaper in Sweden. And he's on the cover, and lately he's been doing live streams talking about, one of them was called PsyOps 101. Why would he come out with something called PsyOps 101? To educate truthers about what's a PSYOP and what isn't. to maleducate them. This has been the job of Jones for many years. The residents of Alex Jonestown have been drinking this Kool-Aid where this is how you read the news. It's either real or it's a psyop, which means it's a false flag, which means it's real, but somebody else did it. George Soros did it. So they don't take away the reality, but they make it scarier. And this is a template, or rather a methodology, for consuming news that they give to truthers. The mainstreamers are just like, believe it all. If it's on the screen, it's real. What are you thinking? Are you a conspiracy theorist? But the conspiracy theorists believe that they're given the inside track by knowing when it's a false flag, and it keeps them involved in the game, and that's what he's doing. But it just seems like convenient timing considering the rollout of Auto Hoaxology 101, which just hit Amazon yesterday. The paperback version of Auto Hoaxology 101 is on Amazon. And to auto hoax, the term auto hoaxer was originally a pejorative that truthers would use to call out those who would say the media was lying preemptively. I mean, there was a competitive advantage. You could go online and you could get hundreds or maybe 1,000 people watching your live stream if you had the gall to go out and say, this mass shooting event is a hoax. If you came out and you said that, you would get all the hits. But if you wanted to wait until somebody saw some kind of a red flag or some laughing actor, if you wanted to wait, you wouldn't get those hits. So some people would just jump the gun. Now, the problem, I mean, the problem with this, from the perspective of the true believers and the alt media types, is it's sloppy journalism. But they're operating on the premise that the reporters are reporting and not creating, not producing. They're operating on the premise that these reporters are objective observers with cameras who are gathering facts. They don't recognize how the entire infrastructure of media is not what we think. So the auto hoaxers turned out to be right the entire time, but they kept getting banned. I was banned by Paul Joseph Watson for calling rubber dummies rubber dummies. Some guy in the chat was like, that's my girlfriend. How dare you say she's a rubber dummy, that she's not dead? And I'm like, shouldn't you be in the hospital right now with your dying girlfriend? Victim of a terror attack that I'm criticizing on YouTube with 20 live viewers. Like, there were so many people on YouTube who would just flood the chats to try to contradict us. They would say, you can't say this isn't real because I know somebody who knows somebody. But we're past all that now. Yet, Q Shaman is out there trying to get people back into that frame of mind. That everything's real, but we have the inside scoop. It's going to be some other culprit. Psyopsicle says, the residents of Alex Jonestown. Oh yeah, Trutherville, Alex Jonestown. Then you have Q Street, where they're all doubled over high on menthol-laced red pills. Hollyweird says, where can I send you some of my findings? If you like Discord or Gilded, just go to ips.monster. If you subscribe to my blog there, you can just reply in any of the comments. You can also email me if you prefer, which is easiest email, infiniteplainsociety@gmail.com. And I do get all comments. So if you post on YouTube, on Minds, on Substack, on Patreon, I will get these comments and I aggregate them all on my Minds account for the live stream purposes so we can all be on the same sheet. Iron Effie says, most all wars are started with false flags also seems to work well. Well, the problem with the term false flags is that false flag is like a military term. Like Team A attacks Team B, but Team A is dressed like Team C. So it's essentially a scapegoat operation. And that's not what we're describing here. A shooting wouldn't be a false flag if we're talking, it wouldn't even be called a hoax. A hoax, which is the media's term for it, they're saying that we're calling it a hoax. Well, not necessarily. A hoax implies they're tricking the news. And I'm trying to emphasize here that it's not a hoax. It's a propaganda production. It's a mass casualty simulation presented as real through the news. But yeah, it's a psychological operation. However, psychological operation is also one of these terms that they've co-opted. But we're talking about propaganda at the base level. You can say perception management operation, but it's just simply propaganda, and propaganda is not what people think it is. And also, to even appreciate this perspective, one would have to step out of the partisan box and look at mass media itself as a monolithic uniform entity, which is what I'm saying that it is. That mass media isn't really partisan. Or the people worried about their guns being taken, the NRA, or any of these right wing pundits, they would call out the psychological operations being used to justify a gun grab. Why won't they call out the fakery? Instead, they say, oh no, it's real. All these shootings are real, but it's not caused by guns, it's caused by SSRIs. The standard talking point, and you'll see this in the future from now on, anytime you see a mass shooting, left will say, oh, there's your AR-15s killing people again, and the right will say, oh no, no, that was antidepressants. They have been saying this since Lanza. No, they've been saying this since Littleton. They've blamed antidepressants for these mass shootings instead of saying it didn't happen in the first place. They won't go that far. Not even if they're forced to pay $73 million, like Armalite was. It's like you're telling me you're going to pay out $73 million and you're not even going to investigate their claim, which is easily debunkable by somebody with a laptop with a little bit of critical thinking. Antichrist Denier says InfoWars banned me from commenting in 2009. I'm grateful for it. Major gatekeeping operation from the beginning. Elephant Tusk says, did you see Elon Musk posted the Fallout TV series trailer in X? No, I didn't, but I saw him post Fallout Vegas, a promo for it a few months ago, so I've noticed that he's been keen on that. And the Fallout, of course, is a reference to the nuke, the blackout, and Fallout, the new excuse for lockdowns, which we're being prepped for. Predictive programming is to prepare you for the fake news, and we're being prepared for a lot of stuff. But I'll take a look because the Fallout TV series is going to be released. When is it? If you have the exact date, is it right before the eclipse or right after? All right, continuing. Antichrist in Art says they love to play semantics. I use the word hoax for convenience purposes. Yeah, they love to play semantics and they steal words and they misuse them. So they've appropriated PSYOP. And now PSYOP can mean, look, everybody in the world was saying PSYOP, 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 Taylor Swift, PSYOP. I'm like, wait a minute here. Normies are talking about Taylor Swift being a PSYOP, and the Pentagon comes out and says it's not a PSYOP. So now they've taken that word out of context. The reason why we stuck with auto hoax and auto hoaxer, which was a slander, is that one, we're right, and two, it's not a concept they can co opt. They have to ignore it. All right, let's see here. Iron FE says years ago, Obama executive order authorizes feds to conduct mass behavioral experiments on citizens. As far as I know, this has not been rescinded. Yeah, I've seen that. The what national defense was it? I mean, this is the thing, and I actually hear this quite a bit. I think it was Naomi Wolf talked about this. Um, the idea that they can legally, I guess, propagandize us. That it's not exactly like what is it? It's like it's not necessarily a. Yeah, that was right. It was a repeal. The anti-propaganda law prevented the government's mammoth broadcasting arm from delivering programming. Now, I remember hearing about this and stuff, but I kind of think it misses the bigger point that propaganda is the rule, not the exception. They've already done it. We live in a construct. We do live in the Truman Show. The fact that we can point out so many fake world changing events, the fact that nukes are fake changes the game entirely. It means that we're living in a mass consensual alternate reality game, and people just go along with it by default. But once you draw, or you draw a line, you're like, okay, well, I no longer believe in nukes. Well, then why should you believe in Fallout? Why should you believe that Putin's a threat? It changes the game board. You can literally step out of it. And this is what I think mind war is what we're in. It's a constant state, constant barrage of propaganda intended to induce a state of inner war. And it puts you at war in a number of fundamental ways. And from the get-go, once you step into the mainstream box, you're already at war with the other side. Woke versus red pill, left versus right. And the division is perfectly schismatic in every major issue to where if one issue holds you, you're on a side with everybody else on a whole list of issues that put you on the other side of the other group. It doesn't matter, it's interchangeable, choose your own reality. However, both sides agree on the big lies that define the world stage as such. So you can fight all day over these political footballs. One side says, oh yeah, we're being invaded by military age men. And the other side says, we're being blessed by working age men who are a net benefit to our economy. These are contradictions. But they both agree we're going to Mars in a few years. They both agree that the sky's falling. They both agree we're in the end times. But the propaganda has been leading us towards some theories, some narratives where I'm pretty sure it's civil wars the flavor for this year. Antichrist Denier says no evidence that any of the Columbine victims were registered as deceased. Thanks to him for recognizing one of the purposes of these simulated events is to polarize people with diversionary theories. Well, yeah, and look, nobody cares about the dead people. They just assume they're dead. And then they fight over the cause. And this is every single time. Every single shooting. Left says gun culture. Every single shooting, right says SSRIs. But then in late 2022, they kind of made a switch where now a lot of the shooters are left wingers. So instead of right wingers radicalized on Discord, they're lefties radicalized on Reddit. And now they're targeting Christian children, and there are hints that these are satanically motivated, or ideologically they're somehow connected to Satanism, which they've made the case. I mean, you have that statue of Satan at the Iowa Capitol, and then some guy knocks it over, and the next day he's speaking at Turning Point. These are all PR stunts, by the way. None of these Christian nationalists at Turning Point worship anything other than mammon, than money, than cash. That's what they worship. You know how many mansions Charlie Kirk has purchased by saying stuff like, "Let's repeal the Civil Rights Act." Like they're taking MAGA in a certain direction, which I think is meant to destroy MAGA, by the way. Okay, let's continue here. That's right, Psyopsicles. The Smith-Mundt Act prohibited the use of propaganda against Americans intended for a foreign audience. Yes. But space is propaganda. And NASA is not merely there to convince us that they can do miracles. They're actually there to maintain the game board, the world view. The blue marble was shown to us as a way of saying, hey, look, this is the world we live in, closed system, not a lot of space, we're ruining it, and it's dangling here fragile in this black empty abyss. We better take care of it. That kicked off the environmentalist movement. It was a major catalyst. And that was our world view. And it's all about what? The one world, no boundaries. They have the overview effect. They see no nations, no national boundaries. They see just one planet, to save. But there's not a coincidence when you look at the emergence of environmentalism coinciding with showing us the entire world as one picture. So it's always been about controlling your inner space, your mind, not outer space. And so they're not going to take you to Mars, but they're going to convince you in your inner concept of the world that the ideal way to live is the Martian colony, space communism. And this was dreamed up by the Russian space pioneers who were very open about how Mars would be the place to build the perfect communist utopia and then sell it to the Earthlings. And that's been the story forever. We're going to live on Earth as they do on Mars because they perfected it. So it's like heaven. It's the idea of getting you to accept an ideal, because once you can accept that ideal, this utopian vision, you'll be more inclined to sacrifice what you have. And that's been their objective. What you have is a barrier to what could be. You can't do both. The commies will never go off and build their perfect space base and then invite you over. No, no, no. They have to have you burn everything down first, and they give up what you have and adopt it as an ideal. So by the time, and this is what I think the whole new age movement is about, it's getting us to move into the age of Mars. But by the time we've all agreed that this is the way to go, yeah, we can achieve it here on Earth. It just means ubiquitous home incarceration to save Gaia. All right, let's move on. Antichrist Denier says the Gabby Gifford shooter was also a leftist. They changed it up to keep both sides divided and paranoid. That was one of the first ones I paid attention to. Gerald Loeffner. And one of the things about that particular shooting, well, one, she's married to an astronaut turned politician. So you have an example of someone behind the scenes in several areas: politics, fake shootings, fake space. This one was blamed on Rush Limbaugh, which I thought was weird. It's like there's no way this guy's listening to Rush Limbaugh. And then somehow out of Limbaugh going after Giffords. They blamed it on the right wing media. I think there was something on a website where they had like crosshairs over Arizona by one of these. Uh, it wasn't who was the one that Lauren Boebert appears to be a copy of. One of these right wing harpies. But funnily enough, if you look at this character, and someone had shown this to me recently, if you look at the sneer on his face, and we're looking at Gerald Loeffner, and you compare him to Glenn Beck from The Blaze, it almost looks like they photoshopped Glenn Beck's face over this mass shooter, which could be intentional. Like, I think that the world stage script writers are just full of all kinds of inside jokes. And this would also tie into, I think, the bigger mind wash strategy of intimidating the left about, I don't know, right wingers being crazy. And Glenn Beck, I don't know if you've watched Glenn Beck, but he was, he's up there. He's about as mainstream as you can get while still pushing a lot of Alex Jones style talking points. Although I haven't kept up with him recently. Okay, moving on. And now there's some other things, other elements of the Gabby Gifford shooting worth looking at. Jurassic Liars has done some great work on showing some connections between that and possible future events, foreshadowing for a future head wound. But I also make it clear too that predictive programming is there. I think we can make the case. I mean, you can't prove to me that predictive programming is done by wizards trying to dodge the karmic implications of bad deeds they're going to do in the future by telegraphing it in the news. I'm sorry, in the entertainment. That's strange. Truth or talking points. They're just like, predictive programming is an eerie coincidence, or it's, they have to tell us. That's a mantra. They have to tell us. Like, no, they don't. The reason why they put stuff in there, out there, just into the public psyche is they're drilling it. They're repeating the propaganda in advance. So you can actually look at predictive programming as a model for seeing future trends and what they are going to do in the future. And if you look back at it, how many decades of preparation did we have for 9/11? You're talking about 30 years of repetition, repetition, and then it happens. Like, to me, that's consistent with the theory of propaganda and repetition itself. Yeah, it's just literally programming. But here's the thing: predictive programming is programmed by the same people who create all the rest of your programming. There's no third party. There's no aliens, no AI. It's not the universe, and there's no synchronicities that can explain it away. And the reason why we have to demystify it is if you allow these mystical explanations, then you're exonerating the media itself, the reporters, the news agencies that create the stuff, and how they actually serve as the vanguard of this global media mind control apparatus. G33 says, I think most of us here are immune to the programming. I think so. I think so, but this is why I think what we're doing in 2024 is key. This is the year where we're going to see who's still programmed. If there are still people addicted to those nothing burgers, the hopium, the idea that there's going to be a great awakening if they just vote for the right person, that's all, to me, indication that someone is not immune to the programming. They're still attached to it. They haven't let it go. So I want to aggregate those who have stepped beyond the screen. But for the most part, I think everyone here has arrived at a healthy level of skepticism. And I accept that. If we don't agree on everything, it doesn't matter. To me, it's about skepticism becoming the commonality here. And, it takes a little while sometimes to detangle some of their webs. Here's an example. High Impact Flicks. Big channel, huge influencer. He said, "Thank the Lord, there's no such thing as Kim clouds." Now, this is a standard talking point by right wing influencers. Now, the thing is, the prevailing wisdom in Trutherville is that the airplanes are spraying a substance and blocking the sun with it and poisoning us. And there is a lot of information going back decades that would contradict this. But it's become one of these things where it's truth or orthodoxy, and if you don't believe it, you're a shill. They won't even examine their own belief. But the problem with this is, in this instance, there's actually copious information out there to explain the phenomenon. And it's such a good explanation and it's so predictable that it's leaving the truthers in a position of looking like they're ceding the intellectual high ground and admitting that they're putting paranoia above critical thinking. So what I asked him is this, because this is the reason why I stick with this. And a lot of people say, let it go. We can agree to disagree. No, no, no. This is a critical issue. Because if someone can't admit that they're wrong, there's a problem, sure. But if someone has 1 million followers and they can admit they're wrong, it could be groundbreaking for what we're doing. Somebody admitting they're wrong and then reverse engineering how they got tricked, it could be progress for this emerging skeptical media. But my point here is that I don't think they can. And since they won't, they're going to stay in Trutherville, which is fine by me. We want this line in the sand to be drawn. Are you going to be on the side of willful ignorance, or are you going to push fear porn? And in this instance, you have to agree that predictability wins. The fact that these are predictable phenomenon means that that explanation has more weight than one based on paranoid conjecture. And I asked him, I said, these are cirrus clouds. Are you ignorant on purpose or pushing fear porn to truthers? Hashtag skyphobia. And my other point here is that skyphobia is a psyop and it afflicts both sides. If you're scared of the sky, why? Like, you really can opt out of it, but there's a reason why both sides fear the sky. Okay, let's move on here. Operation Gotham Shield was a 2017 exercise conducted by the United States FEMA, which tested civil defense response capabilities to a nuclear weapon attack against New York. Gotham Shield. Interesting name. We were discussing all of the various PSYOP connections to the Batman mythos, to that fictional universe. Batman and Joker, what they represent. And, briefly here, and if you watch Joker and Batman, the last two, you'll see what I mean here. The Joker movie is a communist insurrection, kill the rich, fighting the cops. The subway represents the lower class that threatens to rise up. The Joker movie begins in a subway. Joker shoots some rich guys, so he becomes an anti-hero and kicks off this revolution. In Batman, it's Joker types that Batman beats up in the subway as something of a hero, like a vigilante. So Batman symbolizes the right wing, Joker symbolizes the left. It's class warfare stuff. Batman's born privileged and rich. Joker is poor, mentally ill, and he was kept out of the system. So they play upon the symbolism with Batman and Joker, and they also connect it to their various movies, as we've discussed. And then you have the various connections, like Boston bombing. The bomber's name is Joker, Joker Sarnoff. His death penalty reinstated the very day the new Batman movie comes out. Then you have the Batman shooter. The night that Dark Knight Rises comes out, you have the screening of the movie. You have that shooting connected to the Batman stuff. And then in the Dark Knight Rising, there's actually allusions to Sandy Hook, weirdly enough. These are just a few examples. I would also connect the burning bat symbol, the bat as Phoenix, to the 2020 agenda, and much, much more. But my point being, this is a reference to an exercise to prepare for a nuke in New York. And as we speak, there are 1,000 National Guardsmen in the subways. So the subway is a very important symbol. You remember the Batman movie comes out. You have the Prophet of Doom, Frank James, firing off 33 rounds into a subway cart, the one cart that had no camera. He had some beef with the mayor. Total mirror of the Riddler. I mean, Prophet of Doom had his 500 followers online, his radicals. But the story is, of course, the subway represents the underclass. And for a couple of years now, the right has been consistently posting videos of subway violence. They kind of stopped, but it was just a thing. For months on end, all the right wing influencers were posting subway violence videos with the phrase, get out, get out, get out, get out of cities. And this was followed up, and this is why I think it was all predictive programming. It was all followed up by this subway choking death by Daniel Penny of this Jordan Neely. And of course, it was compared to the George Floyd event. And Neely, well, the George Floyd event was kind of Neely, if you know what I mean. But the connection there goes deeper when we explore the subtext of this strangling and how it connects to a Jordan Peele movie, basically called Get Out, but it has a character that looks like Daniel Penny strangling someone in a scene very reminiscent of the subway scene. But the phrase Get Out was tied in here. And interestingly, Jordan Peele directed a movie called Nope, which he said was inspired by the George Floyd spectacle. Shout out to Synchro Morpheus for figuring out who directed that fake subway killing. But the whole thing is, the right considered Daniel Penny to be a vigilante hero like a Batman. In fact, it wasn't GoFundMe. GoFundMe's left wing. If you're right, you get Give, Send, Go, where they put prayers along with the money. But right wing crisis actors go to Give, Send, Go. And Daniel Penny's Give, Send, Go paid off millions. It was the highest earning fundraiser on that website ever. And it's because it was hyped up by so many people on the right, people like Kid Rock, and many others. But the subway, again, it's all a symbol. And recently, planes have been playing a huge role. Last year, it was trains wrecking everywhere. This year, it's planes burning, wheels falling off, doors opening. What is going on with planes? People on the planes having mental breakdowns. Okay, moving on here. Oh, really? You don't say? Says subways are an inner city phenomenon, though. The crimes connected are urban, blue, sanctuary city political leverage points. Oh, yes, absolutely. And so the juxtaposition here is you have inner city subways, violence, congested, targeted by liberal propaganda, and you have get out, meaning go rural, homeschool, quarantine, away from the leftists and all their policies and their socially contagious lifestyles. So you have the moral panic that ties into this because what you're seeing is actually the two sides are being taught to quarantine against one another. One side quarantines against the other side because misinformation, and they're spreaders of the virus because they don't believe in it. So they're motivated by the pandemic. And again, the panic and pandemic, these connections are important because it pertains to fear and quarantining people based on fear. Whereas on the right, yeah, they don't believe in that stuff, but they do believe in hell and sin, and they do believe that the leftists are going to bring about ruin through communism or whatever, so they quarantine, but they're really about the moral panic side of it. They're always outraged. It's the satanic panic stuff, but it's also the moral panic for the way that the leftist entertainers represent themselves. But the mutual quarantining is what I'm pointing out here. Inner city versus rural. And get out being a uniform statement, get out of the cities. And there may be something more to it. And we're thinking about Demolition Man, how in the future, and the movie was replete with predictive programming for 2020, no TP, social distancing, and all this. But in the future, you have the civilized people who lived in these safe cities where everything's sanitary. And then you have the heathens outside, the ones who are rural, who are unclean. And I think that's what they want. And this ties into the saved, unsaved. I mean, really, when I look at this thing, it looks to me like the mainstream and the alt is almost like the main church and the Protestants. And they don't want to take the Eucharist. They don't think they need priests to know the truth. They don't think they need pundits. They don't need the media. They can be their media. You are the media. The alt media is always like, yeah, we are the media now. No, you're a bunch of mindless retweeters. Project Mockingbird, Are you all familiar with the idea of Project Mockingbird? The mocking, in fact, I think Alex Jones calls it the Mockingbird media. But the idea was that you would have some CIA agent in every room. Project Mockingbird was a telephone intercept activity targeted two Washington-based newsmen who'd been publishing articles. But anyway, this idea, of course, had to do with how media is controlled. An alleged large-scale program of the CIA that began during the Cold War. But the idea was, of course, that you could have this sort of echo chambering effect throughout all media by having your people everywhere. And with Twitter, it's almost like Project Mockingbird. And the little blue bird is the mockingbird because you have a lot of people just repeating counter media talking points that are fully approved by the establishment. Okay, moving on here. Mason Free says lock up the 33-year-olds. Yeah, it's too late. I mean, they've already. If you were to lock up all the 33-year-olds, well, we wouldn't have Waco wouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have a white nationalist, domestic violent extremist present in America because Dave Koresh wouldn't have been incinerated because he would have been locked up that year. So we would have been safe. QAnon shaman wouldn't have made it into the Capitol with his spear. He wouldn't have sat in Pelosi's seat, so we wouldn't have had an insurrection if he had been locked up. Charlie Manson started his cult at 33. Taylor Swift wouldn't have happened this year. Her whole thing happened. She was being spotlighted her 33rd year. Candace Owen would have been locked up. She wouldn't have ruined Ye's career with that White Lives Matter and everything that came from that. I mean, there are so many bad things that wouldn't have happened if we had just taken my advice on this. Yeah, if you want to call in, phones are open. Let me put the number on the screen. It is 505 349 0420. Antichrist Denier says, spot on, Tim. They're all retweeters like the Dictabird and the Flintstones with a reverb pedal in a cave. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they all think they're out of this Plato's cave, but no, they are Project Marketing. It's like you are the media. It's like, yeah, you are. It's like you are the cult. Like the media is the cult that controls your mind. And when they say you are the media now, oh yeah, okay, we can brainwash ourselves, we can self-gaslight, we can construct our own pseudo-realities. Okay. Like it's not a win. In fact, what I'm suggesting here is that you cease being mediated. You break out of their Truman Show massified mind template. You don't need to become the media. You become self-mediated. You you perceive for yourself primarily as your frame of reference, and you don't accept the burden of proof that they give you with their mostly the media lies through omission. So it's their selective screening of reality. Most of the lies, and I believe I put this in the axioms for autohoaxology. Maybe I put that in there today. That most of the lies are lies by omission. It's really about the selectivity. G33 says I'll call in 20 when I walk the dogs. Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, autohoax axiom number 44. Media predominantly lies by omission. This is why people don't have any problems with the news. You're like, how do you not see this? How come you're not waking up? They watch it all the time. It's because they're not lying all the time. Like, this is a reporter standing here, and this is what we see. It's like a magic show. Is the magician lying? No, he's giving you a selective interpretation. Now you see it, now you don't. You can believe it disappeared if you're naive, but it didn't disappear. It was a trick. You don't see it anymore. Doesn't mean it disappeared. So if you look at news media as a magic show, it makes a lot more sense because magic shows are based on perspective, optical illusions, and you staying in your seat. Those of us who see through the magic show are not staying in our seats. We've been wandering for some time. We've gone backstage. We're presently trying to get beneath it. Tim, would love to hear your thoughts on the State of the Union gala. I was hoping for the red light background and the weird whispery, creepy kind of Bram Stoker Dracula Biden. I was looking for that, but no, he came out hyper exuberant, excited. It was A campaign speech is all it was. I wasn't all that impressed. I wasn't really surprised either. And it makes Trump look mad. Trump is pretty mad about this. They're actually gloating about it. They're like, "Oh, look, Biden, good job. Now what are they going to say about your cognitive impairment?" Like, high five, Joe Biden. Nobody's going to say that you're losing your mind now because it's like, wait a minute. Like, that's the elephant in the room, and they just contrived something, and everyone's going to accept it. Isabel N says, if the event is real or fake, at the end, it doesn't matter because the idea is suggested. Yeah, that's the whole point. We have this internal concept of the world that's agreed upon by the consensus, and a lot of the stuff that's in there is just accepted by default, and it doesn't matter. They can fake it into existence. It's like contemporary myths are created through mass media, like religious myths. And for the believers, it doesn't matter if it happened or not, because they'll be on the same sheet as the other believers. But the difference is they exist in a fog. They exist in a box and don't know it. And what I'm positing here is that reality should matter, but it doesn't in our subjective world. But if you step out of the box, you can see the flaw there. It's like this subjectivity is actually a weapon against us. Bliss, there's this blissfulness to being totally ignorant. But to me, there's a few issues here. One, it's a quality of life thing. If you believe in psychosomatics and the long-term effects of stress, which the media even admits to, like people who follow the news and read up on every mass shooting get traumatized from it. They admit it. They admit that this atrocity propaganda has deleterious effects on people's mentality, turns them into depressives. What is that? I think they call it climate angst. I mean, why do you think Greta Thunberg is the way she is? She's got climate angst. Wouldn't you be too? You're like, my parents ruined the world. Like, I'm not even going to be able to grow up because my parents have destroyed it. Climate anxiety is an overwhelmingly white phenomenon. Now, that's interesting considering, according to climate change science, it disproportionately affects people of color. And it's a poor person's issue. It doesn't affect the rich people. Interesting. Yale experts explain climate anxiety. So you can find examples of where the mind war does have real effects. Everything's fake, but it does actually affect people's internal concept of the world. So they fake the news. It doesn't alter reality. It alters our internal concepts of it, which then has the effects of allowing them to control you. People are like, oh, belief creates reality. No, it doesn't. There's 7 billion people on the planet that believe we landed on the moon, and it's still fake. The moon rocks are still petrified wood. So belief by itself doesn't change reality. It changes our internal concept of it. But the thing is, we live more and more in our internal concept. The metaverse is eclipsing the meatverse. And once they've done that entirely, they win. Then they control reality 100% because it becomes a mostly subjective, filtered experience. iHuman says Greta is only an actor. Yeah, Greta is there to convey the messages of the Greta Reset, the Great Reset, which is 100% based on a green revolution. You could say commie, you could say watermelon Marxism. But yeah, she's an actress. No doubt her parents, actresses, performers. It was all performative climate anxiety. She doesn't really feel that way. I saw a picture of the inside of her Tesla Roadster, and it was all just like trash from candy and food, just stuff that's not even like recyclable. Like, does she care about Gaia? No. It was all performative. It was all an act. And we've seen other examples, like there's been other climate warriors going to the UN and giving these speeches, and they use these children as human shields because you can't attack them without looking like a bully. And the implication is they're pure of intention. They're not motivated by money and power. So when you look at Greta, you're looking at Al Gore with a ponytail, pigtails, or you're looking at an animatronic puppeteered by some power-hungry people behind the scenes. I mean, did anybody really fall for it? Sadly, yes. The left falls for it because this is also a point. when we're talking about the division, the schism, the left is far more emotional and emotion driven than the right, which is more fact based and intellectual. That is a it is a thing. It's a major factor here. Like they fall for the symbolism, I think, a lot more. And also another point, it's not a coincidence that Greta Thunberg and Kyle Rittenhouse have the same birthday. I don't think it says much about astrology as it does about how controlled and contrived it is. Because you have the poster child for everything the left represents, Greta, and then everything the right represents, Kyle. They're both born January 3rd, 2003. I mean 2001. I'm like, wait, same birthday. And they're both like an equal presence on the world stage for their side, and they're equally polarizing. Ted Stryker says, how about the plane wheel that fell off and totaled a car in the parking lot? Hard to stage, but it's a funny story, random and weird. You say hard to stage. I would say not hard to stage. It could have been a drill. You think airports do safety drills? And I don't know. I'd have to see more video. It would be easy to stage. As a general rule, anything they can fake in the movies, they can fake on the news. They faked planes taking down skyscrapers, and it was a movie superimposed onto the real thing. So I wouldn't put it past fakeability. Could it have happened for real? Sure. And if so, it perfectly coincides with a ton of similar stories that have all followed Leave the World Behind. I'm going to say real until, well, I'm so sorry, I'm going to say fake until proven real if it's an extraordinary claim. In this case, is it extraordinary? I would say yes, because one of the main talking points right now from the right wing is going after what they call, what is called DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. It's just a rebranding of, I guess, affirmative action. But the way the right talking heads are framing it, they're saying that they're eliminating standards in order to promote diversity, which isn't true. You're having the same scores, the same test. It's all standardized. It's a ridiculous assertion that DEI is going to cause planes to fall apart. But ever since they've been hyping up this DEI, the focus has been on planes, airplanes, and parts falling out of the sky. So I think this is actually part of the Psy-War giving the right wing fuel to attack the left and their attack on meritocracy. But of course, their attack on meritocracy is another way of saying white genocide. That's kind of the subtext here. So I'm suggesting that no, it seems like a PR stunt and it's almost too perfect. And they could easily stage a drill. I don't think that's a stretch. Holly Weird says it's no different than the Gaza scene where the lady is carrying slabs and slabs of concrete on her arms. LMFAO. Yeah, it's all a movie. By coincidence, right? 10:6, Modern Warfare 3 comes out. 10:7, we have the Israel-Gaza thing. So you have millions of people, tens of millions of people, maybe a billion people plugged into this new simulation of a war in this video game, and then it kicks off for real. To me, that's concurrent programming. That's preparing people to see the news as real because they've been primed for it. But right after that happened, I went out and there was a movie theater here in town that plays older movies, and it played World War Z, which I'd never seen, and I had to go see it. It takes place there in the Middle East, and it has a scene where Israel lets the Palestinians in to Israel to save them from the zombies. But they begin celebrating so loud that the zombies focus and they climb over. Their attention is focused now on getting in, and they climb the wall, and everybody dies. But I thought that's strange. Timing wise, it's strange that timing wise, I'm watching this thing happen on the news, and then I go downtown and this movie happens to be playing. But it got me realizing here that the movie's already been made. Like, again, they can turn anywhere into a movie set. And generally speaking, and I think the past is a pretty much a good indicator of what's going to happen in the future. And past precedent has been they're using movie magic to form our worldview, not real events. And so I have no reason to think things are going to get real in the future either. And some people have a tendency to believe things that emotionally strike a chord with them, even if they have no more information than you do. Like, oh, that happened down the street from me, it's real. Sorry, that doesn't work. You have to actually be there or have some other information, but your force of belief, you believe it really hard, doesn't make it work. I mean, we're outside the realm of mere belief, and that's one of the distinctions between what we're suggesting and what the other media formats do. Alt media, mainstream, completely different approach. All right, let's move on here. I have a very interesting post by Crypto Curology on Substack that I'd referenced, where he did a comparison or breakdown between the relationship that exists between Elon Musk and Willy Wonka. And there's a new Willy Wonka movie coming out, which I haven't seen it. If it's already out, maybe I missed it. But anyway, he was connecting Willy Wonka to Elon Musk, and interestingly enough, the first day that that movie came out happened to be Elon Musk's birthday, 6/28, 1971. But he makes all kinds of fascinating connections between Wonka and Musk, and even adding on here what I've suggested that Musk is a composite character. But he found a lot of fascinating connections just involving numerology, numbers, time periods between various dates. But I'd come across this before because there's a lot of correlations between the two that I thought they were making very apparent. Like Musk came out and he bought Willy Wonka's house, Gene Wilder's house. Why would he do that? Well, the story of Willy Wonka, of course, is an eccentric billionaire with a factory, and he has this tunnel that takes you to this other realm where they make the candy. And Musk was, at the time, he was talking about maybe starting a candy company to go along with his boring tunneling company. You know, Boring does the tunneling underground with the Alice drills, they're called. But the connection here between Wonka and Musk and the tunnels and the candy, it was all kind of coming together here, along with Musk being increasingly eccentric in public. And then Musk actually goes out and he purchases Wilder's home. He said he said I was going to buy it and preserve the spirit of Gene Wilder. But this is just one of the connections that I wanted to point out before that Musk has been kind of a patchwork of characters. Tony Stark, Iron Man, Willy Wonka, pretty big one there. And I think you could also connect him to Constantine, you know, Pope Elon. That's why we call him Pope Elon. And there's a healthy bit of Werner von Braun built into his persona as well. But I put a link to this if you want to read it. It's an interesting breakdown of Musk's world stage character and how he has all these weird synchronistic connections to Gene Wilder. You know, the other day, even Musk remarked on this. He put out a meme saying, I was born 69 days after 420. And these are two of the numbers that he's consistently used in his companies to send some kind of a message of some type. And it's beyond just a quirky science fiction reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Mango says the Wonka movie's good. I'll probably check it out. There's another movie, Snowpiercer, which has some fascinating connections. Some say it's a sequel to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And it's about when Charlie grows up. But that movie, Snowpiercer, in addition to having a lot of predictive programming like everything else, has Christoph, the actor who plays Christoph, Ed Harris, as the head engineer in this train, which is a metaphor for the West, a closed system, the poor being preyed upon by the rich. I mean, it's one of these stories. Climate change is probably the main theme. But I've also suggested that Elon Musk's Boring Company and Hyperloop could be used to simulate space travel and send you to a Mars base, which is kind of similar to Willy Wonka sending you through a tunnel to the Oompa Loompa land. And of course, what are you going to do on your Mars base? You're going to make candy, farm potatoes. You're basically going to be an Oompa Loomp for Pope Elon. Dinah South says, I saw the original Wonka movie at 7. It was really weird and scared me as a child. Well, it's horrifying. It's probably inappropriate in a few ways. And there's a lot of just flippant, just death. It's pretty horrifying, actually. It's a house of horrors. But it's very colorful and there's candy, so no one seems to recognize that Willy Wonka is an obvious sociopath, probably a psychopath. Groomer. Oh, and then at the end of it, Charlie gets into the glass elevator and flies to space. Kind of another musky connection. Isabel N says Snowpiercer shows you that you'll be eating the bugs. Oh yeah, they're bug bars. That's right. And Snowpiercer had this metaphor for the West as a train that can never stop. And if it stops, they're all going to die. And they're all dying anyway. So it's like we're better off just stopping it, stop the train. And this preceded the Palestine, Ohio train derailment, which was described or compared to in many ways to like a shock to the system, like Ohio, the heart of America. America had a heart attack because the railways or arteries are clogged because of greed and deregulation. So it's another one of these metaphors, which they're always targeting. And Ed Harris is an interesting character worth examining. We're talking about just these various roles that he's had that put him in this demiurge-like role. I would even compare Willy Wonka, in a sense, to the Mad Hatter. There's a connection here. You know, this underworld, this Mad Hatter, this kind of crazy, eccentric character who has control over everybody, but he's kind of a madman. So that's another connection there, because if you go to Mars, look who's going to be in control, the madman. And he's characterized as being addicted to weird drugs. We're talking about Elon Musk. He is a very Wonka-ish like character. But there's this Alice in Wonderland connection as well. The drills, the boring company does these, creates these tunnels for this underground, um, here we go, railway system. But the tunneling systems are done by what's called the Ellis, the tunnel boring machine, the Ellis, like Alice in Wonderland. Interesting connection. Ellis, the tunnel boring machine, keeps on digging. Now, what's fascinating to me here is that one, this is not a reference to Alice in Wonderland. It's a reference to someone who designed it. So it's just a coincidence, right? But the first person to really conceptualize space travel is the author of Alice in Wonderland, Lewis Carroll, who posited that you could drill a hole through the Earth, as in from one side to the other, and you could fall through it in 42 minutes. So here you have a connection here between Alice in Wonderland, Elon Musk, the number 42, and space travel. This was again posited by Lewis Carroll. And if you remember, Alice falls down a hole kind of like a zero G. She just kind of falls through space, basically. She's traveling through kind of space in a way. Just another rabbit trail, or rabbit hole to follow if you care to. Alice, tunnel, boring machine. Now, Resident Evil, which has a lot of fascinating connections to 2020, the whole Raccoon City Corona connection, but one of the characters in that is Alice, and she's in this underground facility, and she comes out. There's a lot of fascinating connections with Alice in Wonderland and mind control in general. In fact, there's something called the Alice in Wonderland syndrome. And the Alice in Wonderland syndrome is when one experiences like these distortions of like spatial relations. So you feel too big or too small, kind of like Alice. Here's the description of it. Alice in Wonderland syndrome describes a set of symptoms with alteration of body image. An alteration of visual perception is found in the way that the sizes of the body parts or sizes of external objects are perceived incorrectly. Now, do you know how you catch the Alice in Wonderland syndrome? This is where it gets kind of strange. One of the side effects of the Epstein-Barr virus, EBV, which is a type of herpes, is Alice in Wonderland syndrome. So you catch this STD and you have this Alice in Wonderland syndrome, where you have these weird spatial distortions. But then here it gets even a little weirder because the Epstein-Barr connection. Well, Jeffrey Epstein, worked for Donald Barr, the father of A.G. Barr. And Donald Barr wrote Space Relations about teenage sex slaves taken to these islands in space, like little island planets. Really sick stuff. But again, the connection here: space relations, Epstein Barr, Epstein Barr virus, and of course the Alice in Wonderland connection to mind control, and basically the subject of some kind of Mad Hatter. Just real strange. Again, trails here. Yeah, exactly, Erica Creech, Palestine. Going back to the White Noise. If you watched White Noise, it features a mushroom cloud, and it's about a train derailment and a toxic airborne event. This derailment happens in Ohio in the Netflix White Noise. Netflix is all propaganda and predictive programming. Shortly after, you have the train derailment there in East Palestine, Ohio. Ohio is the heart of it all. That's its motto, like the heart of a nation. I think you could say Israel could be similarly described as the heart of a nation. So here you have in East Palestine a train derailment and a mushroom cloud, just like from the movie. So I thought this could be foreshadowing for potentially something going down out there in Palestine. Duas in Paris says, I think the Hatters are called mad because the hats contained mercury. Yeah, I've heard that quite a bit. And also, Mercury is associated with, of course, the god Mercury, but the traits, mercurial, the trickster gods, and many of the trickster gods are associated with Mercury. And there's some fascinating connections between these various Mad Hatter characters, and they all seem to connect to Hades and this lord of the underworld, who's also a god of wealth. Hades isn't Satan. Hades is a god of wealth, mineral wealth, the underworld, which Musk being, well, now the second richest man in the world. All right, moving on, joined by Osher. Thank you for joining. We have a pretty good crowd here so far. 66 people on the main channel, 10 on the backup. Number of listeners over at DLive and Odyssey. And of course, we have about 24 people on the audio streams. And the 24/7 audio streams need to be updated. I need to get this moving forward, and I'll probably make that work. Probably now. I've been working on it. I have to first move my schedule back, and daylight savings will probably help that tremendously. So maybe by tomorrow. All right, phones are open. Portal Complex says the return of Pluto was epic. Yes. Yes, the return of Pluto. 2022 return to 27 degrees Capricorn, the place where it was on America's birth, July 4th, 1776. And the connection there's plenty of connections, but the meaning of it is that Pluto's return signifies the death of an empire. It's pretty much synonymous with the downfall of something, and all this has to do with the fall of the Tower of Babel, which we've already connected to the number 1776, which connects to America's founding. And so I kind of think 2022 was showing us the next stage, the next step, the big schism being highlighted, which it really has been since. All right, let's see what else here. Oh, Violet says the dogs in Resident Evil are called Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards Hades. Fascinating. Yeah, that's another allusion again to Hades, but also connecting Hades to Wonderland, and of course Alice. So these are really consistent, and I found other ones you can correlate with this as well. Dorothy going to Oz, the Wizard of Oz, another eccentric rich guy. But the idea here, of course, is the schism or this division between the real world and this underworld place. It's a reoccurring theme and character. Westworld also has these connotations. The main character, Dolores, connects to Dorothy, and this is another one of these. Westworld is like another simulation type movie, but the story is she's trapped in this alternate reality, and the Mad Hatter she must overcome is the man in black with the black hat. And of course, its main theme is mind control exerted through the inability of the Sims to maintain continuity of awareness or memory. after 24 hours. So they're stuck in the same day, the same cycle again and again until they break the cycle. There's a deeper esoteric meaning to a lot of these movies that are worth, I think, worth deconstructing. Like, I know it's propaganda, I know it's mind control, but it's also art and storytelling, and there's a lot of useful concepts, I think, that are illustrated in many of these movies. And why wouldn't it be? If the media has replaced religion, and religion has always had its exoteric and its esoteric, why would it be any different? Why shouldn't we find profound truths in movies? What got me looking at movies in the way I do now is a synchronicity I had between a book I was reading when I watched The Truman Show. So when I watched The Truman Show, I had already been made aware of the significance of Sirius, the dog star, and the symbolism of these various occult societies was put in this context to where I'm like, why is it in these movies where the person paying for the ticket would not be the target for these messages? At first, I thought these are Easter eggs. The people making the films are doing it for the nerds, for the movie buffs. But no, that wasn't it either. Because then I realized that these actors tend to carry the same messages across multiple movies throughout their careers. So it goes beyond a single movie and it tells a deeper picture, a deeper story. I refer to this as the meta script when I talk about the big story that everything is adding on to. And I think I've been vindicated in this. What I call the meta script is really the history that is prefabricated in our news bent reality. They're controlling the world by controlling reality by writing the history in advance and implementing it. And we may say that's a lie, that's fake, doesn't matter, because they're the ones who have total editorial control. Now, this meta script is the story told not just through news media, but through the arts, entertainment, through the political soap operas, through the celebrity spheres. On every single level, they create this immersive illusion that goes down as, quote, history. Erica Creech says the actors are lesser gods then. You know, in the New Age occult religion of Thelema, they have this dictum: every man and woman is a star, and this idea of Hollywood stars and idolatry is all tied into this. I'm convinced of it. That that certainly the people who are taking part in this psyop as stars are more or less lowercase gods in a sense. They're idols. Okay, phones are open. I think someone just tried to call. If you want to try calling again, I turn the ringer back on. It's 505 349 0420. And I have a few other ideas about this as well. And it has to do with theater and the theater of mind war and how theater and mystery schools have always been used for the same purposes. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, what's up, Tim?
Hey, what's up, G33? Walking your dogs?
Yeah, one of them. It,
Oh,
it's raining. You can hear me good?
yeah, I can hear the rain as well. But no,
Yeah,
you're loud and clear.
I like the rain. It's not raining hard enough where you're getting soaked, but it's raining. It's raining, so it's like kind of like makes you think, you know?
Yeah, I like the white noise of it. I can think well in the rain. I can think well in the laundromat. You know, I like the white noise in the background. It's very calming.
Yeah, like a fan at night.
Yes, yeah. Actually, I have a fan here in my office that I use to create that white noise. Any subjects here that pique your interest?
Well, so yeah, I mean, I was just gonna call you real quick. It's been a while. So I want to let you know, like, it's all good and fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is philosophy. We do it for the love of knowledge, and I think, yeah, for the most part, this is good and fun. And by not being politically active or agitated, I think we have a very friendly environment.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I mean, if I get off the hook sometimes, it's nothing personal.
No, it never is. We're on the internet, and when we meet, whenever we do in-person stuff in the future, as this autohoaxology thing rolls out, I think we're going to see how little it matters when it comes to the online debates, what we're doing here is we're making progress. And I had someone message me
Yeah,
today. They said, "I don't agree with you on chemtrails, but I'm going to buy your book anyway." It's like, good. Don't agree with me until you have reason to, and we'll continue the conversation, and then we'll see where it ends up. As long as we're all skeptical, it doesn't matter what we agree on. It means that we're operating on the same premise, so it doesn't matter at this stage.
yeah, it's all about the esoteric philosophy.
Yeah,
Well, for me, anyways.
I saw you commented on my post about the Griselda movie where the character has the scorpion on his hand and he's talking about breaking the cycle of time.
Yeah, you let off like a couple handful of days ago. You let off a live stream with that. It was really good. I
Yeah,
was like sitting there like contently listening because I
and
listened after the fact.
well, it came from Netflix, and I'm like, that's some profound information that is not necessary to the plot of the movie, and that alone was worth watching the entire series because it was making a statement about scorpions and death being the shedding of a exoskeleton one has outgrown, and also asking the question, is time as linear as we think, or are we just stuck in a loop? So, I mean, these are interesting and profound questions, and I think it definitely matters because, um, we're talking about, we take for granted everything, this Truman Show, and we're the ones breaking the cycle. We're breaking the news cycle every day.
Yeah, and then yeah, like your perspective with the breakdown you did was like that's what I was really commenting. That was great. And it's amazing how you like, dude, you'll watch a whole thing and you'll get one Easter egg out of it, but it was worth it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and it made me want to go back and maybe do a breakdown of the tarot cards one by one because these are.
I love Turo.
And for people who don't know, the tarot aren't just random for fortune telling. They contain all of the main symbolism, the entire body of symbolism that constitute Western occultism, and it's all encoded into the tarot. Even our
I
yeah, go
I
ahead.
I follow that a little bit. Well, at this point, I wouldn't say a lot of it, but more than a little bit at this point. Um, and there's some. It's usually women, you know. But I think at this point I could do it. I just gotta have like my book with me, and it's like reading. It's like reading the symbols. We all could kind of do that. That they're here at some level. But yeah, a lot of them are. But dude, there's like two of them. They do it with regular playing cards, and not even regular playing cards. The ones that are like old with just the symbols and then that number of symbols on them.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing. The playing cards derive from or subset of tarot, and they're based on the sun. Four
That's what I heard
suits,
too.
4 seasons. I think you add the numbers on the playing cards, and you get 365. So the number of days in the year.
Yeah, yeah, you brought that up before. I mean, the major arcana, the number of cards, the like what I'm saying, the regular playing cards, the number. There's a lot of stuff there. Um,
The four
but yeah, I
suits.
like Thoreau.
The suits are fire, water, earth, air. Wands,
hmm
the the hearts, and the spades, and then the what's the last one?
Wait, so
Because you got these.
diamonds, hearts,
Oh,
spades,
diamonds,
clubs.
diamonds. Yes, yeah, diamonds like would pertain to earth, for example. Clubs is fire, and then the hearts would be the chalice or water. But these are based on the seasons, and so you're like, well, it's all tied
So
to.
spade is wind,
Yeah,
air.
spade. Yes, yeah, wind, because the swords symbolize the air, the intellect. So spades would be the element of
Yeah,
air.
yeah, I didn't realize that. So yeah, and then I know you're Scorpio, right?
Yes, yes, I'm Scorpio.
So when I was listening to that, like I remember you told me that once, and I was like, I didn't know where it was coming from, but obviously a movie and. Uh, but anyway, so and I had put in the chat one time like out here on the East Coast, there's a rapper that's really big, Conway the Machine, and he's got like this album or something called Griselda.
Okay, okay. Well, she's a cult hero, I believe, and I've heard her name in a few circles. But it's about this lady mob boss.
Yeah, I remember what you were saying. And he's not. I don't even like him that much. He's connected to guys that I do like. So I was always kind of like I would see him in the media, but I didn't really like him that much. I like the guys that he's connected to that weren't. It's more like underground. I remember he was wearing a dress one time, and it was right around the time I think he dropped the Griselda album.
Interesting. Well, okay, this Griselda
Like
thing.
it was like this like it was almost like a kilt looking thing.
I'm not familiar with them. I'll have to look though because this Griselda character, it's not a
He's from
coincidence.
Buffalo, New York, I think.
Well, they bring her out now because I think they're preparing us for Kamala Harris, a strong female leader going after the sexist mob boss, and you have the female cop going after the sexist police force. We're looking at basically Barbie feminism. You know, she kills her husband, hides a pregnancy, doesn't need the man. But there's a reason why they're bringing these
I agree
archetypes
with
out.
you. I agree with you in a weird way because they've been talking about Michelle,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
and there's no way she's
and like I don't really agree with Kamala because she seems like she's like really tuned up a lot of the time. But they always say something about Michelle, and I'm like, yeah, right. Because and then her party, her camp also says no, right? That's what they've been saying. They put her out there, but they've been saying her camp says no,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah, and of course
So
they'll misdirect you.
so and we know how they work with the duality, the switch up.
It,
So and then so like when Biden ended up like running and everything and winning back in the day when he was VP for Obama and they were saying that. And I was I've been doing this for a while, but politics kind of like came in give or take around Trump because it was so abundant in the media. Cuz I it's like wrestling the whole time, but now I'm like following it more so than like esoteric or balancing it. So I'm like, man, Biden, who the hell would vote for that dude? Right? Because even back then when he was still with it and he was VP for Obama, um, I just was like, who would vote for him? But I didn't realize in the past he had run when he was younger, and it was kind of the same story. Like he wasn't that great.
oh, back then he was. I
Um,
think he was sidelined because he plagiarized a speech. I mean, he's always been a
yep,
liar and a
yep,
plagiarizer and a puppet and a tool.
yep, yeah, exactly. So you know where I'm coming from. And I didn't realize that when I said that, but after the fact, I said, oh, okay, he had already run. And then like, then fast forward, he won, and I'm like, man, I was wrong, totally wrong.
Yeah.
Either people voted for him or whatever happened, but he won. So I was like, bam, like even though like I'm
Did you
I'm
watch
aware
the?
and
Did you watch the
I like
state?
to consider myself aware, he ended up winning. I was totally wrong.
Did you
And that
watch the
happens,
State
right?
of the Union address? What do you think he was on?
Oh, I yeah, it was so I'm gonna finish my other thought, but I'll real quick. So the thing he led off with was World War II, Nazis and Hitler. That's what struck me the most. He led off with that. All right. Then he starts talking smack about Trump and this and that, and I'm like, what is this WWE like WWF like Ric Flair and somebody? It kind of like gave me that vibe, and then the whole rest of it was just like an angry old dude yelling. So yeah, it was bad. It was, in my opinion, it was like they do stuff like that on purpose, bad optics.
Yeah,
So like,
it's all optics, isn't it? Though no substance. It's all optics. Oh, look, he looked like he's not losing his mind. He looked like he's there. He looked lucid for a minute there. It's like Weekend at Bernie's, and they're patting themselves on the back for fooling everybody while we're still watching. And
he
like,
does kind of look like Bernie sometimes, like a bad imitation of Weekend at Bernie's. He does kind of look like that.
well, even though he seems unbelievable, and you might think there's nobody going to support him, we have to
Especially with
remember,
those aviators.
look, most well, not most, like half the country supports him. Like I look, like unfortunately, we look at this through our lens of, this is all obvious phony and fakery, but we have to remember and keep in mind the frame of reference of the true believers. And it's kind of sad. It's clown world, but not everybody is
Um,
skeptical.
swaying popular opinion.
But the reason
You
why I
know,
think
like yeah,
Kamala,
some people believe, a lot of people believe it.
I think Kamala over
Swaying
my
popular
over,
opinion.
I think
Edward Bernays.
well, Kamala is going to beat Michelle, in my opinion, if they go with this route because she's not taken seriously. Like Griselda was not taken seriously. She had to establish herself. And then there's another Netflix show called DMZ,
I
Demilitarized
agree
Zone.
with that.
And so I kind of think maybe they'll do it. Like, there's no way Biden will make it, and then he makes it. There's no way
No, I
Kamala
know
will, and
it
then she
doesn't
will.
seem like it makes any sense. So my finishing thought on that was I was totally wrong about Biden. Um, as much as I observed, I was totally wrong about it. And the whole thing about Michelle is like, no, 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 no. But you know, in the past, it seemed like it wasn't even a possible thing. So maybe this is a possibility.
Yeah, it could very well be. But this is the thing too. 2024, this is the year I think we separate from all of the people who are still deceived into following politics. I'm not going to vote for anybody that believes that man landed on the moon. That's my standard. Can you
Yeah,
trust somebody? Can you trust somebody who believes in such nonsense? Do you trust them with your
I don't
life?
trust. I don't. I stop vote. To me, voting isn't worth it at this point, anyways. It's
No.
not worth it. I'm not gonna vote anyways. And then it's like you need two wings to fly a bird. Like these two choices we have are ridiculous. You know, yeah, maybe to some people, Trump's agendas seem more down to earth, but you know, it doesn't. It's he's.
Except for Space Force.
You know,
I mean, the truthers who got suckered into voting for Trump got pulled back into a world of false flags, outer space, and World War III nuclear detonations. They got sucked back into the nightmare. And I'm glad I never really followed them over that particular cliff. I like where we're at.
yeah, you know the whole space thing, dude. Like I agree with you about the moon. You know, and then the only other thing is like I don't know. I like to look up at the stars to like learn from the movements. Okay, that's about it. But other than that, I can't get up there. I can't get that vantage view to see what's really round or flat. You know, I can't touch Jupiter when I see it in the sky and it's so bright, but I know something's out there. So as far as that goes, I embrace what's above me, but I really don't know what's going on, and I can't get out there for the vantage view. So really, that's why I'm always worried about current events geopolitically, and it sucks, right? Because a lot of it's BS. But my foundation is esoteric philosophy, and it always seems when you connect the dots with this current events geopolitically, like there's always esoteric philosophy there. So those are like the way it's easy to connect the dots.
Sure, sure. And I also I'm immensely interested in what's above. And my main point here is questioning whether what's above it, is it just above it? Is it just above our heads, or is it all around us? Is Earth a discrete object floating and is space all around, or is it up? Like the occultists talk about the astral plane and the celestial planes. It's always just like John D. It's all about the planes. So I'm very interested in it, but I think what they have done is they have misconstrued it in order to shrink the size of the world and put us into the world of geopolitics. But what if geo isn't what they say? I remember wondering about this aloud, talking about Eric DeBay, for example. I'm like, what does it matter if you hate this particular ethnic group and you want ethnic solidarity for each country if there's more land? Like, what we're doing is we're fighting over cages in a zoo that the elite created for us. So I think space, the conversation about space, to me, it's really about worldview. And I am interested in the real thing. Like, think about this too. If they're giving us fake explanations and fake science where we can't verify it, they know the real stuff, don't they?
Yeah, that's that's what the whole compartmentalization of fraternal orders and secret societies is about, is the coveting of esoteric knowledge, right?
Yep,
Yeah, they kind of know more than us.
exactly. And so that's what I'm interested in here is like not just pointing out the fact that there's a conspiracy, but that the fact there is a conspiracy means that they're hiding
I
something.
don't even like using that term. You know that.
Right. But whatever they're
It
hiding,
just is what it is, man.
I mean,
To normies, yeah, maybe it's a conspiracy, but it is what it is.
well, I'm interested in knowing what is being concealed with bad CGI and terrible acting.
Yeah, the machine, man. Now they got the machine. Like they have the false image, the false idol to trick people with. You know, like, do you believe your eyes or not? And so anyway, so looking up is like, yeah, like you're looking up for knowledge, and it's connecting dots up there, right? So um, when you said a bunch of stuff there, I thought I had thought points on, but when I say geopolitical, I say that because it's more current event, and I told you before. At this point in my life, what works for me is just like straight like life recon, and the looking up, and if there's a plane or a globe, I don't disregard that. I just don't know really.
I'm just
So
saying, look,
what's
if
in
it's
front
not
of
a
me is where
ball,
I can catch more
it,
traction.
if they've misrepresented the world, then what does it matter? Because all of these various
We know they're lying
I
to
mean,
us.
like, look, Russia is not going to nuke America. Russia's not the enemy of America if at the top of it they're both faking space. Like, there's a bigger question here, a bigger.
Yeah, I think they're having drinks together because there's a lot of reasons why they would be after the fact. Like, yeah, they're like symbolically, like they're laughing at us behind the curtain, Russia and America and China, and because I mean, look at Russia, not their main flag, but one of their like fancy flags has the double-headed phoenix on it. I follow hockey. I play hockey. In the Olympics, when they were still allowed in and to wear their uniforms that are theirs, because I think they could get in, but they wear these weird uniforms that don't have their stuff on them. But I don't have one anymore, but I had a Russian jersey that it's got the double-headed phoenix on it, the Olympic jersey. I traded it for a Czech jersey because I'm Czech, you know, in my past, my lineage. But it's got the double-headed phoenix on it. So come on, dude. Like, obviously they're playing ball with these guys.
Yeah, very, very common symbol, Smirnov. I think Ye put it on his last album. Anyway, I have another caller coming in. Any other comments or anything else for Infinite Plane Saturday?
Yeah, the prepping thing, right? Remember a couple episodes you were saying something about prepping, and I was like chiming in about it.
Oh yeah, preppers, preppers. I'm not a prepper, but I have prepper
There was
friends.
there was somebody that commented on it before I even said anything, and then and that was like I didn't he didn't have that person didn't have a wrench, right? And so they're probably new, and like some of us, it's not about like Alex Jones prepping. It's about just coming out of the house ready at 24/7, 365. So it's muscle memory.
Yeah, I guess prepping generally refers to, it goes back to this DHS threat assessment from years ago where they were saying that preppers and returning vets were on some kind of a list. And the idea is that if you're a prepper, you're not, maybe you're anti-government. You know, the prepper, it's kind of a cliche. Like in Leave the World Behind, Kevin Bacon is a prepper. He's buying a bunch of bottled water because he knows something's going to go down. But and I think in that movie they implied it was domestic extremists, and he would have known because they're the ones who did it. But my point of it is, prepperism is part of selling people on paranoia and then selling the cure, or giving them paranoia and
I
selling the
agree
cure.
with you. I agree with you. If you label something well enough, you don't have to argue it.
I mean, I imagine the people who prep for Y2K are dealing with expiration dates.
I agree with you, man. You see what I'm saying, all right?
Oh yeah, I'm not saying be I'm
That's
not
what
saying
everyday
be
carry is
yeah,
about.
I'm not like be
EDC,
unprepared.
everyday carry.
Yeah, there's a difference though between unprepared and then being a prepper. A prepper is kind of a caricature, but it's a market. The biggest preppers now are probably rich people buying bunkers. Anyway, I have another caller trying to
Yeah,
get in. If you had
yeah.
an Okay, well, appreciate the call and have a
No, you're good, brother. You're good.
all right, have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, I have another person. If you want to call back again, I don't have the ringer set on. I don't like it interrupting it like that, but yeah, 2012. Are your prepper supplies in 2012 still good? I think your Y2K ones have expired by now. And I still think it's ironic that the people who have been planning for years to go into a bunker to huddle down, hunker down with their AR-15s, their Bibles, and their MREs were resisting the lockdowns in 2020. It's like, are you not pro lockdown all of a sudden? A. Garcia says Katie Britt's response to Biden's SOTU is creepy. I didn't think so. I watched Katie Britt's response, and when she smiles while being angry, which is sending a conflicted message. Uh, Everything she does, even the pauses, her eye rolls, her hand gestures, it's all TikTok communication styles. If you watch TikTokers, especially like angry libs, what they'll do is they'll do this smile while they say something mad, like daring you to, I don't know, contradict them. It's kind of menacing, but she spoke in these little clipped sound bites. It's typical of TikTok communication. One of the reasons I don't watch TikTokers is they'll talk about something interesting while sitting in front of the screen blocking what they're talking about, and then they wave their finger around and they float around. So one minute they're grinning at you and you're looking in their eyes and they're waving their fingers, and then they scroll down and then you see the screen for a second. But TikTokers are really difficult for me to watch. And the way they talk, of course, it's a lot of it is mimicking others. But yeah, the Katie Brits was very TikToky. And I think they thought about this in advance. I think it was totally planned, and they probably thought it was going to go big. Salty Siren says, and the bicycle hands. Yeah, it was a really interesting piece of work there. But I think it was contrived, and I guarantee that was not her first take. There was probably 5 or 6 takes. There might have been some hidden jump cuts in there. Like that was an engineered piece of propaganda targeted to reach the TikTok generation, and it flopped. All right, if you want to call in, phone is 505 349 0420. Ringer is back on. Leave the shills behind. I posted this the other day. Get out of Trutherville. Ryan Garcia served up a nothing burger to truthers who gobbled it up hungrily, not even stopping to complain about the lack of substance. Was this merely a PR stunt, or is he an alt-right propagandist tool? Yeah, was this a PR stunt to promote his fight? Is he some type of a propagandist now? That's kind of what I thought. He didn't deliver on the proof. But does it matter? No, it was true enough for the people who already believe it to affirm for them it's true and they can continue to believe it. It's like they put a little more fuel in this particular belief. But I'm saying now, Bohemian Grove is a truther psyop. Hollyweird says, look up Steve Nico's interview on Tucker Carlson. Okay, I'll take a look. Why is Tucker Carlson a big deal? He's establishment GOP media dressed up like a populist. But why is he a big deal? Because he's a truther now? Because he says UFOs are real. What happened to JFK? I mean, really. It's like Musk, Tucker, Jones, Andrew Tate, Russell Brand. These are all gatekeepers of Trutherville, maintaining this sense of we're the ones who are working for the truth. We're the ones who are preventing World War III. That's a big thing. A lot of truthers believe they're stopping World War III. It's always an emergency broadcast from InfoWars. We're going to stop World War III by tweeting and doom scrolling. Yeah, you can doom scroll and tweet all you digital soldiers and you'll stop the world from ending. It's like praying to stop the world from ending. Keep your nose in your Bible and keep praying and you'll save the world or you'll in some way avert catastrophe. That's what trutherism has become. It's a doomsday cult and it is a religion. Anyway, Bohemian Grove is a truther psyop. And it's part of this satanic cabal moral panic targeting the truthers. Satanic panic, Pizzagate, panic is fear. This is a fear psyop. And truthers are a target market group, a subset of the right wing media ecosystem. See, Trutherville is where genuine seekers go to find answers. And instead, they get co opted, drowned out, and lined up behind a host of influencers who eventually lead them to the GOP nominee, right to the voting booth. That's one of the reoccurring themes here. But Trutherville is full of false prophets, red pill hopium addicts, and this year they're going to rally behind Jones, Tate, Musk, Trump. And I'm saying let them. I'm not going to be following politics. In fact, I would be happy, I'd be fine if nobody called in to talk about who they think is going to be, who if Biden's going to beat Trump, Trump's going to beat Biden. Like that's going to be the main conversation for the next, what, 6 months, 8 months. That's going to be the talk. And nobody's going to know until that moment. So if nobody's going to know until that moment, then to me, it's mostly just useless conjecture. But I am interested in trends, and I'm watching Griselda, and I'm like, clearly they're setting the stage for a female president who wasn't taken seriously, who now has made herself into a serious character. But what's more, here's the thing too. Trutherville is being targeted for destruction. The censorship is real, but the information they're censoring is fake. So yeah, all of the antis in 2020 they were being censored. But it made them think that they're telling the truth. Of course I'm telling the truth because they're censoring me for this. No, because QAnon got censored. Does that mean it's true? QAnoners on Twitter got wiped out. Oh, it's because they're so close to the truth. No, you were given fake information that was censorable by the mainstream. So it's a clever trick, but it was by design. And they're going to nuke Trutherville with censorship. Trutherville will no longer exist. It's already being set up for destruction. I think this has been the point of introducing Disease X. They're going to release the mind virus that will justify total censorship. And this is why we are exiting Trutherville. That's the title of the post I put out earlier. Exit Trutherville. Because it's going to get nuked and we'll still be here. In 2020, we let a lot of antis infiltrate. I platformed a lot of antis. And in January 2021, I was already like, the antis, let's just let it go. And too many of them called up, and I platformed what I knew to be a controlled opposition position, but I did so because I wanted to study it. And I think it's important to study these things to understand how they operate. And my point is, I'm not going to platform pros or antis. I'm just not going to. There's no point. This isn't a partisan echo chamber. And I don't have an agenda. My agenda is discerning truth. If you have an agenda, like, oh, this is my culture war, political football, um, yeah, you can keep it on the world stage. Like, that's not where we're headed here. Elon Musk is a fall guy, a ready and waiting scapegoat for whatever the next McVeigh does. He's going to be able to take credit for it. And I've noticed his retweets and he deletes them. He retweets some very questionable characters. We're talking far right proponents of white replacement theory type stuff. People who also post a lot of stuff that is branded as, anti this, hate this, racist that. It's by design. And also remember, Musk has also talked about simulation many times, that we're going into a simulation. And something to point out about this is that there's this element of duper's delight because he knows that we're already in one. You see, the internal concept of the world has already replaced our real world tested version of it. Like they've already put us into a sim for all intents and purposes. And he knows it. So he's thinking these lemmings have no idea they were born into a sim. And he's fully aware of this fact. He's a space faker. You can't be a space faker and not be at the capstone level of the mind control operation that maintains the order as it is, the status quo. Duos and Paris says, so now we're running for the hills to escape truthers. This is getting weird. No, actually, it's not. Here's the thing: not running for the hills, but what I'm saying is there has to be an ideological divide. Like, you're not a mainstreamer, and you would say, I'm not a mainstreamer. I'm separate from that. Well, what are you then? You're going to line up behind Andrew Tate? If not, then what's your alternative? Infinite Plane Radio.
Good evening, Tim. This is IPS correspondent Pete Trippa clocking in.
Oh,
How are you?
awesome. Hey, I'm glad you could finally call. What's on your mind?
Hey, yeah. So I'm just calling to actually, I'm just glad that we're not really talking about Taylor Swift anymore and the Super Bowl. I feel like it was kind of boring for a little bit, but analysis that needed to be performed, of course. Um, just kind of weird dichotomy with the Super Bowl versus voting, in the same year. So I always, you start to see kind of like the notes, I guess, the way I describe it, kind of like, I guess the way Neo sees like the Matrix and all that baloney. So, um, but yeah, the football, Super Bowl game this year, I just kind of tuned out with all like the Taylor Swift stuff, but it was interesting, to kind of analyze that, everything. And I don't know, I have like a lot of things in my mind. I always have a notebook in front of me, and it's tough to,
Okay, well, one
pick
thing.
that one thing,
Okay,
you know.
I had Taylor Swift fatigue before it ever happened. The only reason I was commenting on it was she was nowhere near my periphery, frame of reference, and then she center stage. But my interest in it was that there were all kinds of predictions being made that were like the norm in alt media, predictions about what the psyop would be in all this. And I thought they're mainstreaming this idea for a reason. So I'm like watching it closely, but out of it, I emerged with something. I realized that a lot of the prophets that are using gematria and calendar dates are actually applying a logical fallacy, which makes it possible to make it look like you're accurately predicting the future. And so it's another logical fallacy
Oh my God,
unmasked.
you're reading my mind. This is so cool. This is exactly one of the biggest things that I wanted to call in about. Of course, last time I called in about perspectives and filming techniques, and I could totally continue to break that down. I think we're always fooled by the media and all that stuff, but prediction of the future is a huge communication device that I could call the master planners use on us. But likewise, I think they also communicate with each other, and I've brought that up here before as well. 2023 was a fantastic example year to kind of look back on and just kind of see like the usage of X or 10 or whatever. I've also brought up here in the Discord how like useful techniques and hypnotic it can be to do a countdown. But yeah, just more along the lines of what, stop me wherever. But like just what you were just saying about predicting of the future, I'm really trying to hone in on this X thing, and really just a fly on the wall, really in the Discord, just listening and reading all the time. However, putting some pieces together, it doesn't take that much effort to realize that it could be a countdown to the year 2033, hint, hint, 33. And I think there's something else in that range of years that we could be starting to predict. And I know that they watch us and listen to us and all that bullshit, but like, to be honest, it takes a lot more than just like, a couple hundred, or let's say like now you have over 1,000 followers, like on YouTube and all that stuff. Like it takes a lot more than that to really make, their system work. So it's just, it's almost like I think we're starting to see, a little bit, especially the last 3 to 6 years that you've been on. I think that we can, I think there's a lot of people that are actually like really contributing some solid, sound, logical stuff. And if we all put the pieces together, it could be used for like some predictive capabilities. I don't know what that is, but it's definitely part of my grand unified theory. I used to be like a physics guy, so well, I mean, I still am, but it's just something to play around with. And I know that there's some people that are new here, and all I have to say is, all I ask is like, you just spend like one solid week on Discord. You don't have to do anything, just read and like see what people say, and like you'll start to get it a little bit. Like there's more here and more analysis that we do and research that I think the more people that are involved, we can really, I don't know, does any of that stuff ring a bell
Yeah,
with you?
okay,
Like,
well, the X thing.
because I know like the 10 years from,
Like, what
yeah,
is the
yeah,
X
yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Because we just had it was a Class X solar
X is
flare.
10, X is 10.
So we had the 10, we had the X being the solar flare shutting off AT&T, and then we have the big Xing of America with this eclipse. All of this following
Second,
disease
wait a second.
X.
Yes, yes, I'm also tracking the eclipse that is right over that fault line in either, I think it's like Texas or Alabama. It's huge. Um, why are they preparing us, for, why are they telling us to gas up our cars, get your beans and rice on, off the shelf and into your cupboard? Like, what's up with that? Like, there's just some weird shit that they kind of shake our boots for. I almost like say to myself, like, have we not taken the white pill? Or, like, do we believe in nukes or do we not? Like, is there going to be like a catastrophe during this eclipse or not? So at the end of the day, it's like there's really nothing to fear, because I don't know. Did you see the CDC guidelines that just came out the
Oh,
other
yeah,
day? It
I
was like
just saw something today,
24 hours.
or no, yesterday. Hundreds of schools in the path of total solar eclipse cancel classes over safety concerns. Like, what are they worried about that's this bad? And this is definitely part of marketing something here. And there's a reason why all of these various uh, synchronous or other predictive programming instances from like Leave the World Behind and others are referencing an eclipse. So there's something going on this date that's being highlighted. And it's almost like a ritual or
It's
something.
and I want to drive home that it's a communication device, in my opinion. I can't really speak for anyone else's perspective on this, but in my opinion, it's a communication device between the master planners. It doesn't necessarily mean that, like, for instance, like the gematria stuff, the numbers and how they match up, or you like so and so scored the, 40,000, 4,200th, like, goal or something. Do you know what I mean? Like 42 and 11 and 88 and all that stuff. I think it's all just communication in terms, so they can either communicate about the stock market, shuffle some things around, send products and supplies to certain areas of the world. I don't know, but it's definitely something that it's good that we're tracking it in terms of like from a gematria perspective. But I think, I really want to hear more callers hearing what they think about that, because I really do think it's a communication device. For instance, like the solar eclipse thing, like we should be talking more about like I don't know. I happen to know that it takes like, several minutes. It takes like 8 minutes. Doesn't it take like 8 minutes and 20 seconds for light to travel from supposedly from the sun to like the surface of the earth, in the old school way of thinking, like, we are a globe, like,
Sure.
going around the sun.
Yeah, you go
But
by
like,
the speed
what's
of
up
light
with,
and the
like,
distance, they'll say eight
is
minutes and
that
something.
communication? That what I'm saying is that communication? And people are like, well, what is he talking about still? And what I'm saying is like I can't, again, I can't speak for everyone. I tend to believe in this alternative cosmology that, we are perceivably on a flat plane, and we don't know where it ends. And I'm not saying like anything more than that. What I'm saying is like, why tell us that it takes 8 minutes and 20 seconds, for some, in other words, like maybe that's communication. It's like, oh yeah, maybe 8 days and 20 minutes from now, something's going to happen. It's going to be related to NASA and all that stuff. Just keep an eye on the news for like this, and we'll send you the other
Oh, I see
code,
what you're saying. Okay,
for
I
this thing.
I would say this because we were talking about the tarot cards and how they relate to the playing cards, and it's all based on the same
Yeah,
body of symbols. Well, all
the
of the
bicycle deck. Yeah, bicycle deck.
all
Yeah.
of the planets have their associations on the Kabbalistic tree of life, and their associations with various gods, but also colors and metals and other associations. And so when we look at this construct of space, I don't think any of it is accidental or random. Like Mars being associated with iron and the color red, and then you have Iron Man and Tony Stark associated with Elon Musk, who's taking us to Mars. And then you can find examples of the embodiment of Saturn in the figure of Darth Vader. Darth Vader has the Death Star. The moon of Saturn, one of its moons, Mimas, is a spitting image of the Death Star. So I can find examples where our cosmology is kind of based on this symbolic system, and I think it would go into the numbers and the numerology. Like 93 million miles to the
Well,
sun may mean something.
hmm well, would you say, like, in general, overall, that whether it's ancient or not, like, let's say it's an ancient person or icon that people worship, or a current event like player, you know, athlete, like an athlete, like that people worship. Like, do you think that that's kind of all wrapped up into, can just be thought of as like one big distraction from something? I don't know what.
Maybe. Well, here's I kind of I've taken a more like holistic view of all this stuff. For example, I think a lot of these celebrities and idols are really stand-ins for their various god and goddess archetypes, and that we're literally engaging in idol worship.
Yeah.
Because one of the fundamental characteristics of mystery schools, whether it be Thelema or Freemasonry or any of these other varieties, it's theater where the people who are portraying the priest and the priestess are seen as incarnations, as temporary embodiments of that god or goddess. So they're worshiping the sun god in this person or the goddess. And this is like the avatar concept. But this, I think, holds true, for example, the Super Bowl, where we're looking at Rihanna. Well, the masses are worshiping the lunar goddess for this time. And by worshiping, it's no different than staring at any other idol or priest, or even at to me, it's a matter of focused intent on these archetypes. But this is the thing, it's about the symbolism and, of course, the timing that connects it with this system of symbols. And it's very consistent all
See,
around.
I, I'm starting to branch out a little bit, and I know that you're connected with John LeBon a little bit, and I would say, my question there would be, would John LeBon agree with you in that sense? Not that it's really anything related to this, concept of the conversation, but like, you know, what about history? History's been manipulated. If I were to listen more to like John LeBon, I know that there's been a lot of history that's been manipulated up until about 1 to 200 years ago. You know what I mean? So like all this ancient stuff is really like highly crafted material, and there's more there. That's another example, I think, of like a communication device that like is not necessarily something to worship, but to call our attention to it. Excuse me, have other planners, because there's master, whatever. There's probably different levels and whatever. I'm just saying, like, there's different people all around the world that are controlling all their little tentacles of this particular, you know, the like the octopus of like evil and all that stuff. But like they have to communicate somehow. So I think they have to call their attention in some way, and that's what it is. It's attention seeking. It's not something that sneaks under the radar. I think they do that. It's like in plain sight. Like they communicate in plain view, as either both like a mocking kind of thing, and then also like if you really really did know what they were talking about, you can put it all together and like figure it all out. Like it's just multiple like levels of stuff. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It could be, I mean, we're discerning things based on examining existing patterns and symbols and seeing consistency here, and the communications aren't targeted at us. So I have to assume that there is messaging, and there are those who are meant to receive it, the initiates, and we're meant to be illiterate
Right.
to their levels of communication, the language of symbolism. So
Exactly.
I think it's absolutely true. I mean, that's what really made me look at this stuff. I'm like, there's no way that the esoteric meanings behind the Truman Show is meant for the average ticket buyer. So who is it meant for? And it got me thinking about there's two layers of communication evidently here. One of them goes to those who have the initiated interpretations. And you mentioned history, and it got me thinking of there's this idea that Napoleon Bonaparte didn't exist. He's an allegorical personage. The story of Napoleon is the story of Apollo, the sun, and his entire life is actually in.
I love all that stuff. I love all that stuff. We can get wrapped up in that so much. Like it was just a made up name, or like it's Napoleon is really Julius Caesar, or George Washington, or something like that. Like I love that stuff. It's just great. You can just spin your head in that you know minefield forever and be like, well, what about this? And what about that? How does it all fit? You know,
And I would say
like,
it could be
yeah.
true, but it doesn't mean Napoleon didn't exist. It means that he existed, but his life
Oh,
consisted of enacting a predetermined script, the pre-written history. Like Donald Trump exists, but all indications are he's living out a script. Predictive programming supports this, and if it goes down the way a lot of us are looking at based on that predictive programming, then we can say he acted out a role in life that will go down in history. And I think you could say the same for Napoleon if this is true, if he is in fact an embodiment of Apollo with his 12 generals being the 12 months and his entire life story following the course of the sun. And this is not a new story, but if true, I don't think it rules out that he existed. It's not whole cloth, but rather he
yeah,
existed, but his life
yeah.
was preordained or pre-written.
Hmm. Well, it's important to know that all the work that we're doing and all the research that's happening is we must press on. And I think the predicting the future thing, I'd like to hear more more callers about that. And then I really do think that there's something like last year when all the X's and so forth popped up, X representing 10 years, countdown to 2033. I think there's something there. So I want to hear more callers' perspective on that and hear what they think. So hopefully that's something like new data to like collect, you know.
Okay,
So,
yeah, absolutely,
but anyway,
absolutely.
sorry. Yeah, I don't mean to kill the rest of the night, but that's just wanted to call in for a couple things. There's so much more, but I mean, it's like you got to choose one thing a night,
Well, no, I'm
So
glad you brought this up, and the thing is, we're watching them paint the zeitgeist. Like, what's with all the X's? Before that, what was all the references to the Kraken that went on consistently for 2022 that defined it? 2023 was largely defined by X, and the X, of course, 24th letter, reverse of 42, space X. It's all part of Musk.
right.
X also the connotation of the cross, and in Greek, the first letter of Christ is the letter um, uh, chi or
Oh my
X.
God, you're great with that stuff. You are amazing with that stuff. I just have to like applaud you. I, sometimes like when I'm listening in and I'm like, oh wow, he like really keeps all this straight. And I love that. Like we do have to be reminded of it, but it's just it is kind of interesting seeing like how it progresses, like how it like goes on. So but yeah, no, I'd like to call in again about other stuff like the filming techniques. I dug really into that more, but I think next time I want to spread this out a little bit. So,
Okay,
but
well,
yeah,
I'm always open for
I'll,
that.
I'll I'll keep it succinct, man.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
thanks.
video literacy, cinematography, movie magic, this is just a whole other area that needs to be, I think.
Oh my gosh, yeah, yep, yeah. I realize there's a lot of Disney like stuff that hasn't been talked about. There's like whole corners of the internet that like literally like just tells the story of like how Disney revolutionized video photography, and I'm just like, oh man, this needs to be like categorized and documented like big time in the Discord. You know what I mean? So,
Well, I love
um,
that photo of Werner von Braun hanging out with Walt Disney because that photo tells, a story right there. There's a thousand words right there. Disney and space travel, the guy who conceptualized the moon landing and Mars
Right.
bases.
Yes. Oh man, that
Oh,
I it's
then you get rides.
the
Simulated space travel rides, totally enclosed environments. I mean, the technology that it would take to build Disneyland
yes.
is the same it would take to build
So
Mars, is what I'm saying.
so what's funny is like, have you ever like I know there's no one here. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in the Discord that just walks around town saying like research flat Earth or whatever like that. But like, has anyone like ever really snuck in like the question like, hey, yeah, like, or they'll say something like, oh, they discovered a new dinosaur today. I'd be like, you believe in dinosaurs? And like people would stop dead in their fucking tracks and be like, what? And like, never mind. Like, and I just that's like I just leave it out there because like it makes people think, but at the same time, it's like some people it's just you don't want thing. It's because it's a hard fall. Like when you kind of start thinking about stuff the way let's just say like you start questioning like an alternative way of viewing cosmology. Like it's just very it hurts in the beginning, but like I think like for most people like it's just kind of it's like fun. Like you know how like back in the day if you were that guy that just knew everything about like the pagan version of Santa Claus or something like that or the pagan history of Christmas. I don't know if you ever like were like
I
that, but
do.
I
Yeah,
I, I
there's
kind of used to be,
a
but like
there's that
you know
storytelling element to it. You can tell an alternative story. Oh, the real
yeah
like George Bush and John Kerry are both Skull and Bones men. Do you want to think about that? And I
yeah
remember bringing stuff up like
yeah.
that in parties,
Oh,
and
that's light. That's IPS. Yeah, that's IPS light. That's nothing.
yes, yes, but for people who are in complete Normieville, they hear that and it's like, wait a minute here. I thought anybody could be president. I
Yeah,
thought I could grow up and be president. Nope, you weren't a blue blood. You didn't go to this
right.
school. You weren't one of
Oh, oh my gosh. I should have. I probably have told you this before in the past. All right, I'll leave you with this. Well, because I went to school for physics, but I used to had my heart dead set on becoming an astronaut, obviously. So every year, once a year, I just applied because literally the application process is super fucking simple and you only need a bachelor's degree. Like it doesn't even say like you need to be in the military. It's Tim, the bar is set very low to be an astronaut. So I think they just want anyone to apply for that hope factor. But really it has to be someone selected obviously and like someone that actually either has been trained by them or knows right away that like where the nature of where we are in this place. I mean, if they even really know, who knows? It's very possible. I've thought about this too. That the master planners they don't even know where we are. They just happen to have that knowledge and control that they can do whatever the fuck they want. So like, it's a great mystery. It's a really good mystery to end on for the night.
yeah, I'll
So,
continue along those lines. And
but
I
anyways, yeah,
appreciate the call very much. And definitely call
yeah.
back and
Thanks,
we'll
Tim.
talk more about the
All
cinematography,
right,
movie
take
magic,
care.
and Disney. Have a great night.
Take care.
All right, appreciate the call. That is P. Trippa. And that is a good point about the controllers. And do the people at the top of this even know? And this is where I think it's interesting is you got the lie world order pyramid. You got the world of darkness here at the bottom. The beliefs versus beliefs in a world of subjectivity, reality fluid. But objectivity exists at the capstone level, where they know because they are the liars who disseminate the false worldview. And the knowers at the top are outnumbered, obviously, by the vast masses below. But most of the people up the pyramid wouldn't be apprised of the big picture. There's no way it wouldn't function. There has to be levels of ignorance. For example, someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson couldn't sell the story so well if he didn't believe it. And I think it's a need to know basis. So what we're doing is we're accessing that objectivity. We don't have all the answers, but we're coming at this from a place of what we know. So we're creating a parallel capstone. And that's kind of my objective. When I said we need 10,000 people on the raft, yeah, we need to compete with the number of people in the know and operate from our level of knowing. We have this overview effect. We know about movie magic and fakery as being a part of media construction. We know what media is and what it isn't. We know about the news bent, prefabricated history And knowing this, I think we'll be in a better position, knowing that we're competing with the other group in the know. And we can just ignore Normieville. I'm like, don't try to wake Normieville. You can drop hints. It's fun, these conversations. It's cool storytelling. But um, our objective here isn't to wake people up. Um, it wouldn't work. I mean, truthers have been doing this forever. All you do is you end up creating this pool of people who are just reflexively anti, but they haven't started with skepticism. There's a difference between being a skeptic of media and being skeptical of mainstream media. So alt media types are skeptical of mainstream. They don't believe any of it because there's no evidence for it. But they believe all their own stuff. And they're not skeptical of media taken holistically as a monolith, which is what I'm suggesting that has to be done. Or you're not really a skeptic. And Olfo says maybe the people on top are trying to mess with us, trolling and enjoying people like us going crazy with 33 and 42. Interestingly though, these numbers are consistent with an esoteric system that's older than media. And the number 33 and 42 are used so consistently that I think I've been able to discern what it means. Ascension and falling is basically it. Up, down, black, right, black and white, the duality. And this duality is played upon on many levels. The race war psyops, black versus white, left versus right, commie versus capitalist, they use these numbers associated with each. The 42 is consistently associated with the civil rights or the martyrs like George Floyd or Trayvon Martin. All these martyrs, all of these psyops, these civil rights activists, uh, Jackie Robinson, Rosa Parks, you'll constantly see the numbers 42 associated with them, and 33s we often see with the other side. It's like Derek Chauvin. Only 33 people were allowed in the room. He was convicted 330 days after the killing of Floyd on 420. But my point of it is these numbers are consistent and they do tell a story. But I also noticed that there's a lot of noise. In fact, I actually posted something about this today. Let me bring this up. It's something I just concluded. These gematria types are noise generators. You know the gematria calculators? They're noise generators. They're hiding the script and they're occulting it. They're mystifying it. They will show you 50 different numbers and words that add up to certain numbers that affirm that this event was going to happen on this day. But they're doing it retroactively. They're not predicting it. They're making their predictions. They're building their prophecy after the fact. And this is called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. The story is this guy shoots a barn, fires off all his rounds, and then he finds a grouping and he draws the target around the grouping to make it look like he was a sharpshooter. And what happens with a lot of these gematria calculations and these numbers of days between events and like, oh, this is separated by 7,777 days and 7 months and 7 minutes. They haven't established that these numbers mean anything, but they ascribe significance to it and say, this is a data point in support of my prophecy. Now, this is way different from analyzing the objective story, like all the X's popping up, all the conspicuous Kraken references. We see these themes, we see these stories being told, we see these narrative shifts, plot twists, left-wing shooters emerge, and all of them are following a certain pattern. But I'm not adding on. I'm not trying to build by crunching numbers and using noise generating calculators that just mystify. And here's the point though. The people who use this stuff will say, hey, look, there's no way man could have scripted this. The coincidences are too great. This is beyond probability. Man couldn't have done this, therefore God. So the question is God writing the news and is man reacting? Or is man writing the news? That's a big question here. Is God writing the news? Because if you believe that, then you believe that God is in control of events and man is recording them in the news. Like there, and when I say God, it could be God, the devil, the demiurge, or some kind of supernatural force, but that it's not men with typewriters. And I'm saying that no, it hasn't been established that God or the God of synchronicity is writing the news. They are writing patterns into the news that appear to be synchronistic, eerie coincidences, but when you know that it's pre-scripted, you can see that these are not synchronicities. These are not coincidences. This is a script unfolding. You read a novel, the resolution has everything to do with the first few paragraphs. Not a coincidence. It's a script. P. Trippa says, ever see the movie Pi? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Pi is an interesting movie. In fact, I was thinking about Pi when I was back in the late summer, early fall. I was actually talking about Pi because I was planning on doing some kind of a video series where we talk about these various patterns and how it's going to sound like Pi, where this guy is just ranting about numbers and he's being accused by his mathematician friends of delving into numerology. But what we're describing may sound like that, but when you see that there is a pattern, um, this is why I think we have to stay away from calculators and counting days. If we stick to the objective, we can point out a pattern. We can point out consistency, and we can actually kind of extrapolate from their symbolism what they're actually communicating. But you lose that objectivity when you start asserting that there's a higher power at work. So, like, oh, the media is not guilty of mind war against the people. They're just recording these synchronistic events that a higher power is responsible for. It's just an eerie coincidence that the train wreck from White Noise preceded the derailment in Palestine, Ohio. Eerie coincidence. Here we go. I just searched eerie coincidence train. Um, Photos show parallels behind White Noise and Ohio. Photos show the eerie parallels between the derailment and the Netflix movie. Okay, so this is just an eerie parallel. It's just a creepy coincidence. What about Trump kicking off Armageddon, the final battle, his 2024 campaign in Waco, Texas, the day after Netflix releases Waco, American Apocalypse? What are the odds? It's got to be God writing that. That's just a coincidence. Man couldn't have planned that. That would imply too much. Like, man, that somehow the same people are controlling the entertainment and the news. There's a super bizarre coincidence. This is from Futurism. It's a super bizarre coincidence surrounding the Ohio derailment. But they don't have the frame of reference. You see, they are in the mainstream box. The alt media will say, oh, it's real. And it's worse than they say. It's killing all the fish. They add on all kinds of stuff. It's poisoning the rain. We're all going to die. Nobody doubted that it happened. They just reacted to it as though it was real. Or they go with eerie coincidences. But their frame of reference doesn't include that the entertainment is not separate from the news. They don't understand predictive programming, concurrent programming, which is what we're seeing here. And the fact is, too, predictive programming years in advance, interesting, but not as conclusive. You can say, oh, it's a coincidence. It's years apart. How can you connect these things? Now, it's voluminous, and you see more and more add up and it becomes more precise. But my point of it is that can be at a Snopes level of skepticism dismissed. But you can't dismiss the concurrent programming, the stuff that happens at the same time, the engineered media events that coincide with the entertainment programming again and again consistently with detail. Like, oh, we're going to have to cancel the season finale of FBI because it perfectly mirrors the script of the Uvalde shooting. Or we have to put a warning label on Stranger Things season 4 because it opens up with a bunch of dead kids and you just got a bunch of dead kids on the news today, so we got to be sensitive. Well, they can't show you the dead kids on the news, but they can show you the dead kids on Netflix. And they show you these things on the same day. Your subconscious mind processes it, puts it all in the same filing cabinet, and it doesn't make a distinction between real and fake. So I think they use the fake to bolster the real, not just to prepare you for it, but to give you the mental imagery to make it believable, to put it in your frame of reference. Post 9/11, everybody's like, "Oh, it's just like Independence Day." AT&T, Class X solar flare knocks out AT&T. Oh, it's just like the Obama movie. Elephant Tusk says, Tim, who or what do you think created this matrix simulated reality in which we reside? The mystery schools. I mean, really, at the top of it, This is who we can point to. The mystery school system, the elite, the elders, the ones who have created a system of dividing society into the knowers and the believers. And the believers are purposefully put into darkness, the wool over their eyes. They've been hoodwinked. If you want your hoodwink removed, you got to go join a Masonic lodge, sign an NDA, a blood oath, promise not to tell your secrets or they can rip your guts out. Then they'll take the hood off your head and show you the light. And they'll tell you everybody else outside is profane in the wilderness of darkness, but you are now enlightened. So they've created the enlightened class as a form of knowledge disparity that allows them to rule over the ignorant. So the ignorant today, the hoodwinked, have a clear hoodwink on. It's the screened reality. I put out a chart and I'm making a poster for it for the screened reality to describe the existence of the hoodwinked, the ignorant, the profane, versus those who have seen the light. And this is how the lie world order works. Darkness is ignorance, light is knowledge, and the light is gate kept. It's monopolized. There's a false light given to the truthers. Oh, here's your light enlightenment. And there's a false light given to the woke, but they're all still in darkness. The only ones who've seen the light are the insiders and us. And we're only getting glimmers. We get a little glitch, a little crack in the matrix. We figure something out, but we haven't been invited. They didn't give it to us. We're kind of stealing the fire of the gods in that sense. So who is it? I don't know. Anybody who says they know is probably selling you a stinky red herring to get you to run circles around some big tree while ignoring the broader forest of misinformation. P. Trippa says, but history is continuously erased. Only a certain few remember what happened, so they survive the next catastrophe. Yeah, history is mainstream media going back. Oh, I trust history. It's objective. Is it? The same people write it. And they burn the books of anybody else who disagrees. I think this is another point about X. When Musk put the glowing X on the Twitter headquarters, I realized, hey, this is another reference. I called out Musk as Constantine back in 2017. I called him the Martian Pope. Constantine had a vision of a glowing cross, and he said, under this sign, I will unite the empire. Then Musk puts a glowing cross on Twitter and he says, this is the everything app. Blaze your glory. And this is during the dog days of summer, the blazing star. Now they made him take it down or turn it off. But the point of it is the glowing cross and the bird. Well, if you look at some of the oldest symbols of Christianity, you have the dove and the cross side by side. And I was looking at the dove and the cross and noting the connection between this and the new Bible, which is the mainstream media, and Musk's role with X. X is the public comment, but the connection here, the bird, the cross, we're looking at appropriated symbols. Just like NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, says, oh, we're going to have an arc storm, a flood, and their symbol's the dove. So you have this climate change group that is focused on the flood myth of the day, and their symbol's the dove, just like Noah's flood is also symbolized by the dove. And what's coming now is the new Bible, because the mainstream media is the world state's church. It's the de facto church, and its Bible is the screened reality. It's not on paper, it's not carved in stone, it's a digital world view, but it hasn't quite been perfected. They have to censor it. They have to get rid of all the apocrypha, anything heretical, anything that doesn't fit the dominant paradigm has to go. In today's parlance, that would be conspiracy theories have to go. So Elon Musk is a fall guy for free speech. They're using X to make the case for the public that we need to purify the internet. We need to purify the commons. We have to purify our shared mind space, cyberspace. Just like low Earth orbit, outer space is being jammed up with a bunch of, well, 42,000 of Musk's CubeSats. Well, that's space junk. Space junk is being described as a problem that affects everybody. So if the whole world has to use space and it's a commons, why are we letting the richest capitalists in the world ruin it? He's a fall guy. They're going to say, hey, if we're all sharing cyberspace, why are we going to get this? Why are we going to allow one rich capitalist? to buy the commons and then flood it with mind junk. So the space junk mind junk connection here is intentional with Musk and his world stage character. He's going to give the pretext for censorship, for the Council of Nicaea of our day, the shaving off of all the non canonical texts, and the official state approved worldview will then be issued for the whole empire, united under the sign of the cross or the X. So I think there's a story here, and it has to do with, again, our worldview formation. And Musk is obviously a huge part of it. He's the Mars guy. We're moving into the age of Mars, the age of Horus, the age of space communism. All right, let's continue here. Elephant Tusk says the psyops have been around longer than humanity. Most likely, many prior galactic civilizations have been controlled this way. Yeah, if you haven't watched The Village, I highly recommend it because it perfectly explains how our world works. But another point, too, is that what we're experiencing now with mass media and Psywar is a continuation of terrorizing the populations with fear of God. It's the same thing. There's this interesting piece on Wikipedia, Instrumentum Regni, instrument of monarchy, a Latin phrase inspired by Tacitus that is used to express the exploitation of religion by the state as a means of controlling the masses, in particular to achieve political or mundane ends. So here's a short conversation about it by Polybius, and here's what he says. He's talking about the Roman state and how its cohesion is maintained. He says, I believe superstition maintains cohesion of the Roman state. My own opinion is that they have adopted this course for the sake of the common people. It may not have been necessary had it been possible to form a state composed of wise men, but the multitude is fickle, full of lawless desires, unreasoned passion, and violent anger. The multitude must be held in by invisible terrors and pageantry. For this reason, I think the ancients acted not rashly by introducing among the people notions concerning the gods and beliefs in the terrors of hell. And he goes on to say, the moderns are rash and foolish in banishing such beliefs. So it would be foolish to think that we could live in a world without superstition and fear of God because the masses are fickle. And so this has just been updated. They replaced Noah's Ark with Noah's flood myth, and the climate change remediation and doomsday bunkers are kind of like arcs in a way, but they've repackaged the fear of gods. They've updated all of our devils and demons, and it's worked, and it still works. So what I'm suggesting here is that the mainstream media believers are very superstitious. I call climate change, I call even the chemtrail geoengineering thing, really just repackaged storm gods. That's what they are. And what do? You got, oh, there's a volcano god, got to make some sacrifices. You got Al Gore up there, threatening the world. If we don't do something, the ocean levels are going to rise. Well, what do? Throw us money. Sacrifices. Elephant Tusk says, if your civilization is advanced, like 5D or above, at which point the psyops don't work anymore, and that's when the AI takes control. Interesting. Well, here's what's interesting is we had this new enlightenment. We had an enlightenment where, hey, we don't need all this superstition. We can do without. And we replace it with this new scientific paradigm. But the scientific paradigm has been co-opted for the same ends. It wasn't just pure knowledge for knowledge's based on facts and objective reality and the scientific method. No, it still contained, or still contains, I think, all these old elements. Sort of like objectivism. Was objectivism a break from subjectivism and mysticism? No. Objectivists, from the very beginning, were plugged into the TV. They were plugged into the media, which makes you a subjectivist. The instant you put on that digital hoodwink, when you stepped into the box, you're no longer in objective reality. So objectivism never really quite got off the ground. It's not an exaggeration to say that we are the, I would say, the only true objectivists in the world today, which is kind of a weird statement because we're like, yeah, NASA's lying, the world's probably flat, but we are truly the only objectivists in the world. Dewis in Paris says Noah versus Noah is one I figure is worth trying on normie friends from time to time, but no avail. I only get glazed eyes for my trouble. Yeah, I I, I can show the what I would consider to be an extensive use of religious syncretism to describe our modern worldview. Every element of it is borrowed from the past and updated. But normies don't have the frame of reference to process it. You see, they live in the worldview. I live in the world. I have a worldview. It's different from the worldview of the people who primarily live in it. There's a fifth, like here's a point. Like you're half in the world. You're like 1 foot in the real world, 1 foot in your internal world. And if you're a believer in the mainstream and you're both feet in your worldview, like that's your primary frame of reference, you can't look outside of it. And I think that's where people are. It doesn't compute. The idea that there's a planner there, that there's a bigger plan. No, it's all random. It's all chaos. There's no meaning. You're trying to imply a deeper level of meaning, and they're saying there is no meaning. It's a conspiracy to connect the dots. There's no continuity. There's no bigger picture. But I don't believe in waking Normieville because they're unwakeable. The woke, you can't wake them up. They're married to big government. The only people who have any chance of achieving true objectivity are the people who are naturally resistant to the mind control, and these would be the truthers. But Trutherville is contaminated with a lot of mind junk, and it's also controlled. So there's like no platform for skeptical media critics. This is not platformed. Objective, skeptical media critics, there isn't a place. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Now, what would happen if people stop believing in the psyops? I don't see that happening. You know, you're born into a deep faked reality. All the hype about deep fake, deep fake technology is going to allow them to, basically trick anybody and anybody who doesn't have any skepticism towards media will be susceptible to deep fakery. But it's brought up as though it's some kind of a future threat, something to look forward to, something to dread. But no, we were born into a deep faked reality. The best analogy here is imagine you're born into a theocratic society that lives by the book and is very brutal and repressive and doesn't allow people to have other worldviews. You get their dominant worldview. Anything else, you get your head chopped off. They throw rocks at you. You're a heretic. You're burned at the stake. We're talking about there's a monopoly on worldview creation, and everybody's expected to accept it, whether it comes through a holy book, through some cult leader's interpretation of a holy book, and now it's through the news media or through the media itself. But these days, of course, you're allowed to have any number of belief systems, so long as they believe. They don't have a place for people who are non believers. Non belief isn't really a position. Skepticism means suspending judgment. It means not believing. And it's not a thing, but it's going to be a thing. It's a thing with us. You might say, "Well, I think that shooting was real." And I'll say, "You can believe it, but you don't know it." I don't believe it because I don't have enough knowledge, but based on what I can see, I have plenty of reason to think it's fake, and I think that outweighs their mere belief. So if you want to believe it's real, you have to confront the counter evidence first. Dewis and Paris says it's not so much an attempt to wake them up anymore as it is to being akin to putting a quarter in a jukebox to see what comes up. Well, the week after the Israel Hamas thing kicked off last October, I had a conversation with a normie, and he said something to me like, "Did you hear about the 40 decapitated babies?" And we had already talked about those, and how nobody wanted them dead more than Ben Shapiro because he wanted to grandstand atop a pile of dead baby heads. But it was just a propaganda piece. So to me, it's like, it's a propaganda piece. I don't believe in it. I'm not affected by it. Now, if it was real, I would be horrified. But since I know it wasn't, I'm a non believer, which is not apathy. But now the person who asked me about it, they said, "Did you hear about this atrocity?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's terrible. Nice weather today, huh?" And they were like, "Yeah, the weather's nice." The difference between the two of us is we were both indifferent to the atrocity, but this person believed it and was indifferent. I don't believe it and I'm indifferent. So, in a sense, the blue pillars have adopted, I believe, a toxic level of apathy where they will tolerate anything. They've just accepted it. And that's a character, a difference in character, in my opinion. Dewis in Paris says Ben came across as a rabid dog. Yeah, he really was an attack dog. He attacked anybody on his own network who didn't just immediately respond to the atrocity propaganda. He's not a journalist. You know, the journalists today are all activists anyway, advocate media, but there's no impartiality. It's like if you just believe it as fast as they can pump the information out, you end up believing video game footage, old recycled footage, CGI animated, AI generated stuff. Uh, that was the main theme. For October, I was really happy about the Israel Hamas thing because it was a perfect place to explain to people how it's fake on both sides. But the people who support Gaza will believe all the atrocity propaganda that affects their side, and they won't believe the other side, and vice versa. So it's like, well, which fake dead kids do you believe in? But to me, I'm like, well, we're seeing rubber dolls, and at the time, I'd pointed out there was like 20 dead kids on the sidewalk. All of their eyes were closed, their mouths were closed, and I said, those are dolls. Those are Sims. They're simulated training dolls, and they have simulated training dolls, by the way, that can bleed and breathe. But I kept pointing it out because I said, hey, look, if they were really dead, their eyes would be open and their mouths would be open. You wouldn't have the closed eyes and closed mouth unless they were sewn shut or glued shut. I mean, I worked as a embalmer, mortician, restorative arts, and I've sewed together, I've closed up face, I've done it all. My point of it is, I see these props and I'm like, okay, to my eyes, those are fake. I can tell they're fake. And I drew so much attention to it that within a few days, this news story came out where you had this guy running around with a dead kid with eyes open. Now, it looked as fake as the others, but I'm like, okay. It's almost like they're responding to us. But one of the points that the last caller, Pete Trippa, made was we need more people involved because you get more perspectives. And I think that's true. My perspective as a former embalmer and decedent transporter has given me a few insights when I'm examining atrocity propaganda. Or even dubious claims made by the likes of Stu Peters, who say, oh yeah, the pokey clots your blood. I'm like, well, every single embalming case involves pulling clots out. But if it's an unanticipated sudden death, it wouldn't even be an issue because they would be autopsied and you would have to do a 6-point injection because the arteries would be severed, so it wouldn't even come up. Okay, let's move on here. Elephant Tusk says people get triggered by Sandy talk. Yeah, they get triggered by all the school shootings talks. No pun intended. But all those stories are full of holes. Look, I don't even bring up the stuff around people who aren't receptive to it because that's proselytizing. And I think proselytizing is a tactic employed by truthers because they're told, you're awake, false awakening, but you're awake, you got to wake up the sleepers. Get mad at them for not waking up. Meanwhile, the sleepers are told, hey, those guys over there, yeah, they're crazy, laugh at them, which is gaslighting. So you have the system built so that the brainwashies will gaslight the skeptics, but the skeptics aren't skeptical enough because they bought into the presupposition that the screen was somehow objective, an authority, a window to the world. I mean, it's a clever system because the people who see through it, instead of jumping out of the box, go deeper in. They leave the blue pill dream world and enter a nightmare. And that's not where I would want to be. All right, let's move on here. I'm going to move on to my minds.com/ Infinite Plane Society. Again, hundreds of schools in path of total solar eclipse are canceling classes over safety concerns. Maybe they want everybody near their television sets. Okay, I got a comment on my video, The Mandela Effect IPR Deep Dive. If you haven't watched that video, it's on my main channel, it's on BitChute, but I just did a short 10-minute video on the Mandela Effect. But here's what he said. He said to me, wait, what? No. They had a literal van and Ed McMahon would pop out of it. It was a commercial campaign for 20 years. How old are you? Are you a Zoomer? So this individual who's Mandela affected had watched Ed McMahon handing out checks for 20 years. That's what he says. See, this is a myth. It's an urban legend. Urban legends exist. Myths exist. And people carry these things. It's like a mind virus. They just carry it. I caught it. I'm going to repeat it and give it to somebody else. But he's claiming that he watched Ed McMahon give out big checks for 20 years. Okay, well, how many people is that? Let's say they gave out four per month, okay? 36. I mean, we'll just say one a week, 52 per year. Like that's a lot of checks. And if you're going to say that this many people receive checks, then what happened to all of the money? You got 1,000 big winners, 1,000 multimillionaires who all got big checks. Where are their descendants? Did you grow up with any friends who are like, yeah, our family's rich because my grandmother got a big check from Ed McMahon? Like it never happened. It's a myth. But he's saying that I'm a Zoomer, so I don't remember it. Well, most Mandela affected people were born after Ed McMahon stopped even showing up on TV. Yeah, I've been called a whippersnapper. Erica Creech says you're a whippersnapper. You know, some chemtrailer did this to me too. They're like, um, well, some of you younger people don't know that those of us who grew up back when there weren't any chemtrails. Our skies were blue and the sun was yellow. And now the sun is white and the skies are a sickly gray. Like, no, I go outside every day. And they'll say to you, oh, you just don't leave your basement and you don't remember. No, I walk, I run, I spend so much time outdoors that I see the sky at various points of the day. It's blue. Sometimes it's cloudy, but the sun is the sun. Nothing's changed. But they say this stuff, and I'm like, well, how old are you? Like, if you weren't born in the 30s, don't tell me you remember a childhood without contrails. We have documentation. And the science of contrails, the observations, the record keeping is very consistent. In fact, you can find there's actually a website you can go to that will tell you when we're going to have contrails. Not when they're going to quote spray, but it's going to tell you when the humidity and pressure is conducive to the creation of persistent condensation trails. They'll tell you in advance. They've studied this because military planes have needed to know this information because you wouldn't want your multi-million dollar expensive military plane to leave a trail. Okay, let's see here. G33 says, "Are you a good swimmer?" I'm drown proof. I mean, I can stay afloat, but no, I don't swim. Dewis in Paris says, "Ed McMahon didn't exist in my reality prior to ME." See, I thought Ed McMahon died in jail. Didn't he die in jail? That's what got me. I was like, I thought Ed McMahon died in prison. I don't know what he did. It was in South Africa, I think. But I remember it being the Ed McMahon effect. Yeah, it was the Ed McMahon effect, and then somehow it got changed. You know what's ironic too is that the Mandela affected people don't even know who Nelson Mandela is. Kyle Rittenhouse posted this today. The amount of people who threaten me on a daily basis is ridiculous. I receive a constant death threats every single day, and I've received zero help from the FBI in prosecuting the people who have explicitly threatened to kill me. I mean, who doesn't want to threaten Kyle Rittenhouse? It's kind of funny. I mean, it's just a troll. These are just trolls. Here are just a few of the direct threats. I mean, he's got a punchable face. We can agree on that. But I don't think you should threaten to kill people. But he's saying he's threatened. And I'm like, look, maybe instead of becoming a right wing media star, like a wannabe Steven Crowder, maybe you should go into witness protection. This just shows where your priorities are. I knew from day one he was an actor on the world stage, that he was going to be a right wing media star because of who he was around and who produced this whole thing. All people connected to Tucker Carlson. He's a folk hero. This is all fake. But if he was really worried about his safety, if this is a real thing, he would be in some kind of witness protection program. He wouldn't be writing books, writing biographies, putting out little video games where you shoot the media. Yeah, he put out a video game where you shoot media turkeys. All right, moving on. Spoiler alert. This is a pretty decent meme. Spoiler alert. These guys are gatekeepers. Don't believe me? Just wait until the fake alien invasion occurs. If they were to fake an alien invasion, you know who's going to believe it's true and who's going to suggest it's real. Jones, Tucker, Musk, Trump, Rogan. They're waiting for it and they're ready to believe. They want to believe. And they want you to want to believe. I'm not going to. And when the aliens arrive, remember, they're going to be partisan. The left is going to embrace them. The right's probably going to want to shoot them. That's kind of how it's split. Down in South says, where's Gage Grossarm today? Did he get death threats? Gage Grossarm was targeted by trolls, and we actually put out a $1,000 bounty to check his arm out. We really did. And I was like, shake his hand, twist his arm, see if he really had his bicep blown off. And shortly after we did that, he went into hiding, but then he came back in another form. So he had this really obviously hard to disguise name, Gage Gross Krauts. But after that, he changed his name because that was too obvious. And then he got hit by a car, but instead of like remaining undercover, he went on the news and he said, I was hit by a car. I need to raise some money. But he came out under the name Paul Predator. So if you don't know who Paul Predator is, Paul Predator, an equally weird name, is Gage Grosshart's new form. So he came back, and now his left arm is broken. So both of his arms are jacked. Paul Predator, formerly known as Gage Grosskreutz, injured in a hit and run. I watched this story, I watched the video, and I'm like, why is this guy blowing his own cover? Like, is he that hard up for attention? Because he blew his own cover. It's like, I changed my name because I didn't want to be chased around, and then why are you going on the news for a non-fatal accident? He says, they were waiting for me to go through the crosswalk. So he implied it was on purpose. He added, the accident left me with multiple broken bones, damage to my spine, lacerated liver, damaged teeth, road rash with an extended hospital stay. Arrest made in savage hit and run in Milwaukee. Anyway, Paul Predator is now Gage Grossarm, and he raised $900 on GoFundMe. He should go back to burglarizing homes, right? That's what he was. He was a burglar. Kyle shot a burglar, a pedo, and a strangler. And the strangler, weirdly, was friends with Jacob Blake, the trigger event for the entire riot. Most of you here know this, but I just put this in my mind. Space has always been a simulation falsely represented as real to the ignorant masses. The modern science fiction paradigm is a worldview designed to replace all religions. Space is a new iteration of the ancient concept of heaven. Nasatology is a scammy space religion. That is really what it is. Just putting it bluntly. On the night of the State of the Union address, Donald Trump had 6.66 million followers, and he's following 66 people. And if you look at his avatar, it forms a 9 if you follow the stripes and the stars with 9 stars. It forms a 9 and then an 11 over his face with the blue covering his right eye. Highly suggestive again that the next 9/11 is going to be the Trump head wound. That's why his hat has the 45-47 on it. 4 and 5 is 9. 4 and 7, 11. So the next big 9/11, according to our readings of the predictive programming. Engel says, what if Ed McMahon was only doing a commercial production that the company never actually did? He would have only have worked for an agent, or it could be an inside joke by Johnny Carson. It was an inside joke. They were constantly joking about it. In fact, this is a very well documented marketing piggyback campaign where American Family Publishing piggybacked off of Publishers Clearinghouse's publicity. And they managed to merge the two. And a lot of it, again, this is a folk myth. That's all it is. It's fascinating, but it's a folk myth. G33 says, I won't lie, I listened to Kenosha on the scanner, almost all of it. I also listened to Kyle's trial, very entertaining. It was entertaining. We watched it live. And that's when we realized that they think they can sell you a story as real when non-mainstream media carries it. Oh, we can trust Elijah Schaffer because he's a alt media guy and he's a live streamer and he's going to all these events. Well, they're going to these events for street cred, but they're just as controlled. These riots are all closed movie sets. Yeah, there's some real destruction, collateral damage, I'm sure, but have you personally inspected any of it? I would recommend it. Next time they pull off some kind of situation, I would take a close look and see how much of this is just run by the police departments themselves. Yep, I believe the BLM riots are staged and managed by the police and the fire departments, that these are run by the government, the DHS. The Department of Homeland Security is behind all these controlled demolitions. And I'm sure you have a lot of useful idiots drafted into it, but I'm kind of curious about the numbers. I really am, because a lot of people were being bussed around, and look how many provocations we've had since Floyd, and we have had nothing compared to the sustained weeks-long riots. Somebody pays for that stuff to go on, if you ask me. Commenter says, truthers say, don't buy electric cars, the grid's going to go down and they'll shut off your transportation. They also say, logging into my virtual database to buy digital crypto. Yes, I've noticed a bit of kind of Luddite-ism where some people are like, oh, don't use AI to generate art or chat GPT, it's cheating. Got to resist the AI, it's going to replace us. But if you're using high-speed internet, you're already embracing the technology, and you can't turn back history or time on this. It's going to roll out regardless. Cole Anchor says, do you think Alex Jones is with them? Well, yeah, I mean, look, Alex Jones is part of the mainstream media ecosystem. He's the boundary. He's actually a gatekeeper, but also he's there to get the attention of anybody who sees through it. So if you wake up and you're like, there's something more to the story, you will gravitate there where you're given answers that will keep you there. Instead of him saying, hey, these events are fake and this is Cywar, he says, oh no, this is real, but the Democrats sent a mind-controlled MK Ultra assassin to do it because they want to take your guns. So he puts you into the box where now, oh, I got to go after the left because they want to take our guns because they want the commies to take over and they're going to bring in military-age immigrants through the borders unless we vote for Trump. So it brings you into the story. So 100% he's a part of it. He's a big part of it. He's basically, in many ways, the equivalent to, well, who would be a mainstream talking head? I mean, you couldn't make a distinction to me between someone like a Megyn Kelly and an Alex Jones. Like they're in the same box. And one other point too, he reinforces the essential reality of everything, whether it be 9/11 or any of these mass shooting events. He'll question the official story, but he doesn't replace it with truth. And a literalist said, very smart people around me insisted the BLM riots didn't exist. I was talking nonsense, LOL. Well, people who weren't heavily immersed, you're right about that. This is kind of funny. The mainstream deliberately ignored the riots because it was the summer of peace. It was peaceful protests. And when January 6th happened, I remember laughing about how it was just like, wait a minute, this is a joke. This is a guided tour. This is a pantomime. This is a simulated. It was so um I don't know, listless. Like it wasn't chaotic. I didn't think anything was going to blow up. But you look at these BLM riots and it was chaos, fire, violence. And so I'm thinking the media is clearly gaslighting us because they ignore a summer of riots and then we have this weak little um, melee here in the street outside the Capitol and they're walking around inside like a bunch of goofballs and they called that a riot. Didn't make sense. But you're right. The people who watched mainstream news didn't see the riots. So for them, it didn't even happen. They just see peaceful protesters, is all they see. Okay, moving on here. James O'Keefe, apparently one of his reporters secretly recorded him. James O'Keefe had made a secret trip to the Bohemian Grove. So James O'Keefe, and let's see who else was there. Kid Rock, all have been to the Grove, but apparently he's been there, and people look at that as very suspect. Like, who else has been there? I'd be curious to know. But it's not what Alex Jones hyped it up to be, and that was one of my main points today. I think I even put that in the title of the live stream. Nothing burgers at Bohemian Grove. Cole says, I agree with you 100%. Alex Jones is with them. I started getting to this rabbit hole. I'm wondering why, when he interviewed David Gergen about the Bohemian Grove, he seemed caught off guard. Well, they built a mythology around it. And this fear of the evil cabal only targets the right. Like, yeah, there is obviously a secretive mystery school network behind everything. But what he kind of did there is he painted basically a false picture, and it's easily debunkable, and he overly hyped it. But this hype of an evil cabal thing is a fixture of the right because they still believe in the ancient concepts of sin and the devil, and the left believes in, instead of sin, their replacement is actually virus. That's the construct, or even the carbon footprint. We're talking about invisible qualities or an invisible form of contamination that only the priesthood can cleanse you of. That's what we're talking about. And if you don't separate from those who won't get cleansed, it'll get on you. So you get this new concept of salvation and quarantine and what it means to be holy. And the censorship agenda is about purifying the new Bible, the media. This is a holy war. That's what we're looking at. And a holy war is about establishing a monopoly on your worldview. So you're getting rid of everyone else's religion. It's a holy war. Well, the mainstream media is waging holy war now, or it's a sanitation war. And they're sanitizing our minds. It's getting rid of the mind viruses they disapprove of. Cole says, are you saying this stuff still leans into politics? They're doing it because of left and right. No, the left and right division is there to keep people in the big deception. It's a split down the middle, designed to never be reconciled. And as long as people are fighting over winning, they never exit. But it's a never-ending cycle, and it's totally a psyop, and they're totally controlled from above. But the left-right thing is inescapable because the instant you enter the mainstream world, whether you're political or not, you've taken a side depending on your worldview. You're filtered into it. Some people say, I'm not into politics. I don't pay attention to politics. Yeah, you say that, but if you exist on the worldview, there are certain presuppositions built into it, and that will reveal where you fall. And it's really a matter of what you're receptive to as far as the target marketing. But yeah, politics is a subset or it's a substrate of mind control. So is religion. So is education. So is entertainment. Entertainment is propaganda first, and then entertainment's a side effect. But mind control is the main game, and it's global. Why would we need left right politics if we have one world, one government, one authority? And we do, but they hide it. See, this is the thing. The need for the appearance of division is to hide the unity, is to hide the collective yoke. Cole says, after the people discover what they're doing behind the scenes, wouldn't they think, wow, that doesn't matter who I'm voting for, we all lost? Or do they expect us to be drawn into this? The trend is this. The the apathetic blue pillars may not vote because they don't think it matters, but the red pillars, they think they're voting to make a difference now. They think if we don't vote, the communist left will win. If we don't vote, they're going to take our guns. This is why the gun thing has been such a big deal since Waco. Alex Jones, by the way, was radicalized at Waco. The narrative of they're going to take the guns and the guns, Second Amendment is our final firewall against global tyranny, that's one of the main polarizing stories there. So the people who are questioning the news get drawn deeper into it, and now they become the media because the media is now the enemy. So no, they don't quit. They don't leave the system at all. What we're doing here represents, I think, the first authentic breakaway from the mainstream ecosystem. Again, alt media never broke free. And there isn't a platform for a skeptical media critique. It doesn't exist. We are fomenting it. We are fomenting a culture of disbelief on purpose. Auto Hoax 2024, that's what I'm calling the planet killer space rock that is en route to hit dead center of the world stage at some point in the next 3 to 6 months. If they don't stop us. But I don't know how that would be done. By the way, Ryan Garcia, he was the guy who showed up at the Bohemian Grove barbecue with no meat, just nothing burgers. He announced that from now on, he's only going to talk about boxing. So here he is reading a script. He's not ranting. He assures everyone that his fight with Devin Hanley is going on. Okay, so now it's all
I
about his fight.
understand what they are and I understand what they look like. But I'm coming back to announce I'm not going to speak on any other topic other than boxing, sports, and my fight. That's the only thing I'm going to be talking about. And I'm
What about the evidence of the elite preying on children at Bohemian Grove that you witnessed? And what about the exposing the deep state, declassing it, causing some kind of awakening? We're waiting for that. We're waiting for that one bit of evidence. Show me frazzle drip. I want to see Hillary Clinton running around with a little girl's face skin over her face. They never show us. But no, he's like, I'm not going to show you the evidence. Watch my fight.
training for this fight. I want everybody to know this fight's still on. 420, 5 weeks of super focus. I have PBD helping me in this camp and many other warriors. So I thank you guys for the support.
Lots of these MMA and these boxers, he's a boxer, a lot of these fighters are propaganda props and tools. So he's not going to expose Bohemian Grove. He's not going to expose rigged boxing. He's a prop. And they love to use these fighters as propaganda props for the right because the right is already associated with toxic masculinity. The left is toxic femininity. The left is Barbie feminism. It's all toxic. And the right, as portrayed by the left, is toxic masculinity. Let's see what else we have here. Yeah, he's wearing some kind of a laurel wreath here out of gold. This is mind control cap. I don't know what this is, but yeah, he definitely got put back into place. They straightened him out. Loose cannon, he's not going to tell the truth. I'm just saying Boogeyman Grove is a hoax. But Doomsday Prophecy is so hot right now. He did post this as well, so you might want to mark your calendar. According to Ryan Garcia, and this is reported by Daily Loud, a major earthquake will hit on June 6th. He said, June 6th, earthquake bad. Well, where? Where? And why this June 6th? Why wasn't it June 6th, 1996 or 2006? Or why wouldn't it be June 6th, 2026? We want the 666, don't we? Or is 2/4, I guess 2024 kind of counts as a 6? I don't know. But apparently we can mark our calendars. There's going to be an earthquake. So be ready. Be near a door jam or whatever. Get outdoors. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you're now getting all of the archives. And the archives on Substack, from now on, they have this new feature. They're going to have transcripts, which will make it a lot better for promotional purposes, for SEO. Search engines will find us. And you'll also get this artwork. I've been creating a lot of this, AI gen stuff. And here is Ryan Garcia with a torch confronting a giant owl at Bohemian Grove in a boxing ring. And then up in the trees, you see children in bird cages. So you'll get a lot of this artwork sent to your inbox. Again, the membership at IPS is like 5 a month or 1 a month at the Patreon, but the memes are free. You don't have to return them if you quit or if you leave. Dwayne Garrett says boxing is on life support. Cole says this is unrelated, but does the government have something against Nixon? Hmm. Well, okay, Richard Nixon and Donald Trump have some interesting parallels, and this was very clear in 2023, and was it 2023 when the Roe v. Wade leak, or was that 2022? It was 2022. June 24, 2022. But anyway, they overturned a 50-year precedent. But there's a lot of connections between Trump and Nixon, Watergate, and the January 6th thing. There was a few things that have been correlated between the two. And it might just be the establishment media. You know, they're going to always hate the other person's main guy. But when we say the government, it's like our government's not really partisan. That's all a hoax. The government is a subset of the entertainment. I'm sorry, of the mind control, the PSYOP entertainment complex. Because the thing is, we think about governments like our governments are in control. No, there are governments, lowercase g, and then there's government, uppercase G. And government rules all, and this government isn't out in the open. It is behind this monolithic mind control presence. It is behind our worldview. It monopolizes it, and it programs everybody into the same collectivized hive mind. And government's not what we think. It's not even elected. Government is worldview formation by this cryptopsy, by this hidden or occulted group, but it's there. I mean, it's not a conspiracy. And this is their main power. Everybody is on the same sheet. Everybody's in the same false worldview. What is the common denominator? You know, the belief in this new concept of heaven, outer space. The ubiquitous, the accepted universal threats. The things that connect us all, the big lies, are what start steering us in the direction of seeing that there is a monolithic centralized control. Cole says the history books slandered Nixon. Doesn't surprise me. Like, I'm pretty sure that the history books are going to represent Trump as a Hitler, and the Q is the new swastika. You know, the history that is going to be printed in the books that you're going to be tested on when you're going to school is being written by your mainstream media. So even though we may know, oh, they're lying, this is fake, that's fake, we also have to understand that that will go down in the history books. That our perceptions don't matter. What matters is the screen. The believers in the screen have actually allowed it to depose their own self-perception. They're like, my perception is secondary. They self-gaslight. They plugged in. But if you have unplugged, as I have, if you have unplugged, it's, I don't know. It's pretty apparent to me, though, that the schools aren't separate from the entertainment, from government. It's so monolithic. It's hard to understate this. And this is why you have the loud bickering. You're not supposed to think that Fox and CNN are interchangeable, that they're literally the same thing, that they're both occupying the same area, which is belief system versus belief system. But they're interchangeable. It's choose your own adventure. There's a bunch of people coming into this country. It's a population crisis. We can all agree on that, right? It's a population crisis. If you lean right, we're running out of people. That's a crisis. If you lean left, there's too many people. That's a crisis. Well, can they both be true? Dewis in Paris says, maybe we're ruled by the dead, which would explain why they're so good at remaining hidden. Well, the people who rule us, or whatever rules us, could be beneath us. Deep space could be underground. Like maybe the world stage is literally the world, and they're backstage and beneath the stage. Maybe outside. Cole says, "What do you think the end game is? Like everyone's a zombie. They wouldn't have any power if there weren't people to control." Yeah, see, they're not going to wipe us out. Here's the end game. The end game is that it's a cycle of entrainment. It never ends. The end is just the beginning of a new cycle, and they live by these very Machiavellian principles. Like I recommend reading Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which was dedicated, I believe, to the devil. But if and this guy was also a community organizer, coach, and mentor to like Obama and Clinton. But rule number 9: the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. And I mentioned earlier about the use of superstition and fear of the gods to control the masses. So they realize that the threat can constantly be applied. They can constantly threaten us. So we're always in a defensive posture. Truthers are in a defensive posture. They're scared. And the thing never comes. So if you're always crouching, you're in a state of subservience. You've already been conquered. They've conquered people with fear. If they manifest something, you can defeat it. And then it's over. It's no longer a threat. You survive it. It's no longer a threat. So for the most part, I think that we're looking at rule by superstition and terrorism, and it never ends. It never has an end game. The end game is really just the constant maintenance of the status quo, which is a system of believers and knowers and a line separating the ignorant from those in the know. Cole says, "Do you think the cycle dated back to ancient Egypt?" Yeah, I think as long as religion, look, has been inseparable from the authorities, the government. Government and religion are synonymous, in my view, and that there was never a separation of church and state. And that what we're seeing right now is a continuation of the old mystery schools. If you look at all the symbolism we're constantly pointing out, it's syncretized a lot of different systems, but it's primarily Egyptian. Freemasonry goes back to the Egyptian symbols, like the Washington Monument. Yeah, that's Osiris. But the Washington Monument symbol of the obelisk, the earth god, has been repackaged as the rocket like Saturn, Saturn V, which Saturn is another name of Osiris in this context. The rocket going to space, symbolic of the earth god uniting with the sky goddess. So, no, everything goes back. It's never changed. The old world order is the new world order. They're just updating the symbolism. Commenter says, "I found religion kind of weird as a kid with no knowledge. I was raised Christian. I found it weird sitting in a church with people watching these people." Yeah, it is fascinating. I think that religion is controlled opposition to spirituality. I think those are two different things. Religion and media mind control, it's about worldview. We're saved, they're not. This is the big picture. This is how it ends. It's about giving you the big picture. But it's different than spiritual practices or figuring out who you are separate from your body. Are you separate? Do you have a soul? Do you have a spirit? Like these are all things like intuition and how your intuition may conflict with the world around you. And what do you listen to primarily? What your senses tell you physically? Do you listen to your higher intuition, or do you dismiss that because science says there is no intuition? Science says there is no soul. You're just some egotistical ape, a little too evolved for your own good. You think too highly of yourself. But religion never had those answers. And if you do any kind of self-styled religion, like you look into things on your own, you delve into stuff, it's like it's automatically oh, you're new age. It's heresy, it's blasphemy, it's but anyway, religion has been superseded by media. Religion, opiate of the masses, no, it's media now. It's a collectively agreed upon delusion. And so what's interesting to me too, and this is how they're so clever, is you have these atheistic believers in this scientism paradigm and probably have hope for transhumanism and maybe meeting with aliens, which are just modern angels. But they think, oh, we're above religion. We don't need God. What sin? What's that? But they also believe in Gaia. They believe in the flood myth if we don't change our behaviors. They have accepted the idea of space and space travel and man becoming a multiplanetary species as our optimal future. That's like a utopian thing. They've been basically absorbed into the new religion while letting go of the old one, and they're given a false sense of intellectual superiority. Like, oh, we've risen above superstition. No, you haven't. You believe in new superstitions, but yours have the backing of science, so you're kind of under a delusion. Okay, let's see. Elephant Tusk says, I cannot tell you how many times a woman I go to for medial apps says, I don't have to worry about XYZ because I'm going to be raptured. Well, okay, rapture, being taken away from the world before something happens. The rapture story has been repackaged as alien invasion because the aliens will rapture the believers, the ones out there we want to believe, and they will zap everybody else. Because the aliens are also, if you notice, how are they arriving in all these stories? Like angels, either punishing us on behalf of God. Angels punish us on behalf of God. Aliens punish us on behalf of Gaia because what we're doing to the world. We're experimenting with nukes, so the aliens have to come down and stop us. So the story is aliens are there to execute the judgment of Gaia, like angels execute the judgment of God. But simultaneously, for the believers, angels can rapture you. For the believers, aliens can rapture you. And then you have the stories of angels tampering with humans and aliens probing people. These are all, again, reinvented new iterations of older stories. And I think they use the same structure because we have the same, I think, instinctual fears. Or, for example, they're tapping into, I think, primal fears and archetypal things. So the idea of a sky savior is very appealing to us for various reasons. And I have a few ideas, but the idea of aliens coming down to save us from the world or angels, there's a reason why these motifs are appealing to us universally. Commenter says, do you think that if in another universe that this group system didn't form, that another one just like it would form, or maybe something else could have formed that is better? Interesting question. And I don't know. I mean, this is another point. I'm very comfortable saying I don't know, and I'd be happy to be proven wrong on anything I've asserted. But the people who accept the dominant paradigm of balls in space and evolved apes, they think that our knowledge ends at the edge of the universe. We have question marks light years away, but we've got everything else mostly figured out. And we know how it's going to end, and it's going to end soon because it's meaningless. And the universe is going to collapse on itself like a big taco, or a planet killer is going to wipe out the Earth. So we're done. And it doesn't matter because it's meaningless anyway. Any sense of meaning is apophenia, some kind of mental illness. That's like this view. It's like we're in this dead, dying place. And some people even find that to be, I don't know, like when they repeat it, they talk about how we're infinitesimally small and we're so meaningless compared to the big picture. They say it almost with some amount of pride. But the difference between that dead, dying, static universe, we know it all, incurious because nothing matters, it's very nihilistic. The difference between that view and my view is that my question marks are much closer. My questions are just a few thousand miles away. I don't know what's out there. I don't pretend to know. I don't believe what they say because the belief is an excuse not to be curious. You're just accepting an answer you were given. So I'm left with a lot of curiosity and a lot of questions, and I certainly don't know. But the idea of parallel universes, multiverse, like I don't quite know. I read this interesting book or the audiobook I listened to it a few weeks ago called Reality. It's called Reality Transurfer, and it was recently reality transurfing. I'll put it up on the screen here, and it has many insights into reality. Here's actually a blurb. According to this concept of reality described in transurfing, the world has an infinite amount of variations and forms of reality. It means that the world can be perceived as an informational structure that contains an infinity of variations of materialization with their individual scenarios and decorations. But I kind of came across this view by studying the works of John Dee. and not taking for granted the universe as described, but rather as maybe it's not quite static and predetermined, but maybe everything is happening now. Anyway, this book, Reality Transurfing, goes through a lot of these different lines of thinking about where does mind and matter, like is matter a substrate of mind, for example? But it gets into the idea too of choice and volition and intention and synchronicity and how these things could be related. And I happen to think, based on intention, synchronicity, and the intrinsic meaningfulness of everything as far as what I've experienced, I'm inclined to think we're in something of a cybernetic system, that there's a feedback loop. And lately I've been looking at the bat as a symbol of this. You know how you have echolocation, the bat's in a cave and it's in the dark, and it screeches, it sends signals out, which then bounce back and allow it to navigate. And I think in many ways, our intention is like sending out signal into the dark matter as we experience it as light going through the dark matter of creation. We're experiencing, perceiving simultaneously. But if we go with the flow and we don't use our intentionality, if we don't consciously choose, if we don't exercise volition, if we don't exercise will, we're just going to go down a linear trajectory. That linear trajectory is an option. It's only an option, past, present, future. It seems like it's the norm and it's always going to be that way, but is the future that logically follows and predictably follows the present and the past necessarily more likely to occur than something totally random? And what this book suggests is that man plays an intrinsic role in the unfolding of events, and that your intentionality, which would explain why the mass media matrix is always focused on your attention and holding your attention. It may be to prevent you from deviating, from accessing infinite possibilities, from finding that maybe the universe is more responsive to your will, which would mean it's not static and predetermined, but that it's more or less malleable, and that human intention maybe is even a part of the equation. But the idea of intention and receiving synchronistic occurrences or any kind of meaningful exchange with the world is analogous to echolocation. You sent a signal, you got something reflected back. I mean, for example, and I mentioned this the other day. I was in my car writing a little bit about intention, and I was actually writing about mirrors and the symbol of the mirror and the idea of a vision that's subjectively perfect, or you think it is, but from others it might not be, and how if you put your own version or your own vision ahead of other people, you might leave collateral damage. So I was just thinking about intention and about my own effect in the world, and do I want to, you know, avoid being a destructive influence on people? So I'm thinking about this stuff, and when I say intention, I'm also referring to will, like the human, like will, the human will, willpower. And so I look up and I see a goodwill. So on the random, and this is a big part of it, breaking away from the predictable pattern. So I go random. I get out of the vehicle and I walk into the Goodwill. And I have no reason to go in there. But I think when you go into randomness, you open up more possibilities. And the first thing I note is a big mirror on the wall. And the mirror has kind of a weird phoenix bird in the middle. It's woodwork. But the frame is a thick wooden frame. And it says, live, love, laugh. Live, love, laugh. So I'm looking at the mirror and live, love, and laugh as I'm thinking about vision, mirrors, and what I would want to project into the world. But as I'm looking at this, the song on the radio by, it's like a kind of a country song. The song on the radio has the lyrics live, love, and laughter. And the song is by Donovan Frankenreiter. I had to look it up. But again, the mirror, live, love, laugh, song, life, love, laughter. Direct connection, coincidence, sure. But then the coincidence attached to my train of thoughts and what I was writing, and the impetus for me going in there, the goodwill, thinking about intention being good. Again, live, love, laughter, that's all good intention stuff. So what would you call that? Me seeing the mirror, making the connection instantly with the song, to me that's feedback. That's echolocation. That's me figuring out, or rather getting some kind of information to kind of suggests that, yeah, my existence here isn't as a separate entity on an object, but I'm part of a system itself. Diaz Natas says randomness is a key factor in the plot of Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, also Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yes, randomness is a key part to divination. You know, you roll, you drop some runes, you throw some tarot cards down. But what are you really doing? You're playing with synchronicity itself. You're throwing out random symbols with the intention of discerning some kind of order. And it sounds insane. Synchronicity is not supposed to exist, but the idea of behind divination systems is that it's like the fate. It can be, if not controlled, it can be steered, or other possibilities can be accessed. But you're playing with synchronicity, with randomness, and it seems random. That's what's always so jarring about it. Anolfo says you should listen to Thomas Sheridan. You are speaking his language right now. I'll check him out. I used to listen to Thomas Sheridan. He had a lot of interesting things to say about psychopaths, I believe. I know he was really mad at Flat Earth, which is funny. A lot of people got mad at Flat Earth. All right, we've taken some interesting calls today. We'll take some more tomorrow. Oh, by the way, tomorrow we'll be live with John LeBon and Fakeologist, and we're doing an anniversary for 311, but we're recording it tomorrow on 310. So I'll make sure you get the live stream notifications. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter, you'll get the art, you'll get the memes, you'll get the archives. I'll put a link below, and you'll get live stream notifications. You don't want to miss this. As far as the time, I think it's going to be. I'll send out a notification tonight and let you know. Erica Creech says good intentions, will towards others instead of brute will. Yeah, and look, I was actually thinking about this in particular because I was doing some research on different personality styles, and the people who are not only selfish or self-centered, but who expect others to enable that do a lot of damage to people, collateral damage. And it just got me thinking about will and intention, and the idea of will itself is intrinsic in even like Aleister Crowley's thelema. Thelema means will, but one of their main tenets is that you should be free to exercise your will in any way, so long as you're not getting in the orbit of another star, as they described it. But it's an interesting idea overall. But the concept of mind or your thoughts in any way influencing what occurs is outside the purview of our modern paradigm, and it's incompatible. And before I ever came across any kind of critical information about NASA, I was already confronting this conundrum, thinking, okay, well, what does this mean? Because you can say it's just coincidence, apophenia, self-fulfilling prophecy, or cognitive bias. You set yourself up to see something, you see it, and I'm like, well, that only goes so far. Because I have a handful of things, more than a handful, but I have a number of situations or events where the very specific information led me to very specific things that told me in uncertain terms that this that there is a higher level of interactivity here. It's just not the norm. In fact, it's dumbed down. You're told to ignore it. And why could that be? And one other point here. If we're looking at mystery schools behind everything, and one of their basic tenets is a belief in magic, then why would we just ignore that? We talk about suppressed technology. Are they hiding Tesla tech, free energy? I don't know. But what we do know for a fact they're hiding their own interest with everything that would fall under the category of magic and the occult. Elephant Tusk says infinite parallel realities exist, doesn't really matter. All that does matter is directing your own world line templates in the direction you wish to go. Well, the key thing is this, because I mentioned Griselda and the scene where the scorpion's walking over the guy's hand. He's got the watch and he's talking about time being a circle, and not really linear, but it's a circle, but you can break that circle. And so I was already kind of talking about this. And what he meant was by breaking the circle is becoming an active, intentional, you could say someone who's living as a magician, perhaps. In other words, taking an active role in the decision processes. But this character was reading a book called Labyrinths by Jorge Borges. And I'm listening to the audiobook now, Labyrinths. And Labyrinths confronts a lot of these interesting concepts of infinite realities and stuff. And I'm reading the chapter now called The Forked Garden. And he's describing how our life is like a labyrinth in a way, but that every choice you make puts you on a different trajectory. The key thing here is choices. I mean, how do you exercise freedom? How do you exercise your will with your decisions? And if you're making a decision for yourself, you're making an active, conscious, volitional decision. You are accessing one of these other possibilities. If you don't decide, you go with the flow, you filter everything through the screen, you're getting pushed into the consensus version of reality. How much does it divert? Because I don't believe that belief creates reality, but it malforms our worldview. And our worldview is, I believe, mostly formed to constrain us. Our sense of geography, possibly. Our sense of time, absolutely. Oh, we're in the end times. Constraining our sense of self, yeah, you're just an evolved ape. There is no higher consciousness. What are you, crazy? But the free will topic, like, okay, you can have a million items on a menu, but the person who provided the options might have some level of control over you, limiting the expression of your free will. Elephant Tusk says there is only one mind. Well, look, I find all this stuff very interesting because the media conceals more than it reveals. Yeah, it's a liar, but it mostly lies through omission. And our modern paradigm omits way too much for my comfort. And the stuff that I think should belong in the worldview, that which is in my own worldview, is the stuff that they specifically designate as pathological or some kind of illness. And it's like, is noticing patterns really that bad of a thing? It's almost like they're hiding something. But there's another good movie. And we talked about coincidences and chaos or randomness. If you haven't seen Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, it's annoying, but it's worth watching. Free Guy is about a city called Free City, but they're all NPCs. He wakes up, and how does he wake up? Well, the first thing that happens is he actually catches sight of a woman that he feels something for. So love. So some spark of something causes him to temporarily attain some level of sentience. So he goes from an NPC to suddenly now he's thinking a bit more and he starts making choices. So instead of getting dressed in the same way and wearing the same suit, he grabs a different suit. Now it looks just like the first one, but it's like a suit from the other side of the closet. But he does these like meaningless little things where he's making choices that break from his routine. So you see that he starts freeing himself from the NPC paradigm, from the free city, which is locked down. He starts freeing himself by making choices and random decisions. And by doing things that are random, he begins to recognize that he's a separate entity from everything else. But Free Guy, if you haven't seen it, is a fascinating study into, I think, this concept of NPCs and also how he tries to wake up his friend who's a security guard, which would be a conformist in a uniform, and he couldn't get his friend to even contemplate breaking the program, and his friend chose, for the most part, to stay with it instead of because with freedom becomes some kind of responsibility, I guess. There are a few other things about Free Gaia. I did a review on it that I think are worth looking at. It has another interesting kind of context here. Obviously, it's the CEO, the evil CEO who controls Free City, and he turns them all into NPCs. And if they can just get rid of the CEO, everybody can live free without being NPCs. It kind of has that kind of communist revolution subtext, but Elephant Tusk says most are on autopilot, driven by their programmed subconscious mind. Yeah, autopilot because they are auto believers. So the auto hoaxer is the media skeptic who assumes it could be hoaxed until proven real. I'm not going to go with real until proven fake because they don't tell on themselves. And if you wait till there's evidence for it being fake, you're going to be lost in all the fakery. You're better off remaining skeptical and shifting the burden of proof back to them. The auto believers just download all the information. They automatically believe it, and they believe 100% of the news they didn't watch. All right, let's continue through my notes here. Bryce Hall, who is another fighter, he kind of confronted Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia actually called out Bryce Hall as a pedovore or something, so they got into some beef here. And sarcastically, Bryce said, "It's true. Ryan was with me in Epstein's Island. We got recruited to the Illuminati together and did a blood sacrifice while worshiping Satan. He's trying to leave the cult now and is getting exposed by the masses." So, yes, Ryan Garcia attacked Bryce Hall, accused him of messing with kids, and Bryce Hall said, "Yeah, it's true. We met at Epstein Island." Obviously not true. By the way, if you go to ips.monster or any of the sites, I put the link right there. Even my Twitter account at the very top. Autohoaxology 101 is now on Amazon. I might record the audiobook myself, but you can get the paperback or the Kindle if you haven't read it. This is what is going to put the parallel media on the same sheet. Those of us who aren't stuck with Trutherville, we're not stuck with any of their baggage, we're kind of breaking free, we're moving into pure skepticism, we're quarantining from the world of believers. This book is a thing that will get us all on the same sheet. Turning Point, The Bomb in the Cold War. I haven't watched it yet. It's on Netflix, but I'm pointing this out. Turning Point is a interesting phrase, and it has everything to do with the bomb and the right and Turning Point USA and the Turner Diaries, interestingly enough. But anything you see on Netflix, it's a safe bet that it's predictive programming, but it's another association of Turning Point with the bomb. And the reason why this matters is the turning point is when they go to get the guns. Turner Diaries, Timothy McVeigh was motivated by that. Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, vanguard of the white nationalist domestic violent extremists. It's their think tank. So Turning Point's a big deal, but also the predictive programming is for domestic violent extremists to work with Russia probably and get their hands on a nuke. That's where it's coming from. That was even implied in Leave the World Behind. So for this documentary about the bomb and the Cold War to be called Turning Point, again, I haven't watched it yet, but just that phrase alone being associated with the bomb, not a coincidence. John LeBon just spoke with Team Yahawashai today. Just released this. I listened to the first hour. It's actually pretty good. If you haven't followed the Bonversations, I highly recommend it. I was on, actually, I've been on it twice so far. But this is actually a really good conversation. They were talking about, do we live in a virtual reality? And Team Yahawashai uses video games as like metaphors. Like they use a video game metaphor for this reality, which I think is fine. You know, simulation theory is a rebranding of other concepts of reality using a more modern nomenclature and a model that makes a lot of sense to explain things. Do we live in a virtual reality? Now, I don't necessarily go that far yet. What I'm mostly saying is that we're living in an artificial reality construct that we internalize, but reality itself is real, or relatively. I mean, I don't go full blown everything's fake. Like, this is why I criticize the Mandela effect. You can't tell me the news is fake if you're saying reality's fake. You can say the news is fake if it's not faithful to reality. But if reality is not faithful to reality, then what difference does it make if the news is fake? Because everything is fake at that point, right? Kevin Mooring says lots of faulty planes in the news these days. Planes fell and leave the world behind. Yeah, and not only that, because Mike Rothschild says that there's no such thing as predictive programming, that it's a nonsensical concept itself. And I'm like, are you serious? Because I'm looking on the news and I'm seeing nonstop planes falling, but not only that, but the news itself is saying people are comparing the AT&T blackout to Leave the World Behind. People are comparing, look, this is a couple examples. Leave the World Behind 4 days ago is trending. Why? Because it predicts the US cellular outage. Leave the World Behind. Could Netflix movie's cyber attack actually happen? It goes on and on. But these are just, quote, eerie coincidences. Leave the World Behind viewers think the Obamas are sending a warning movie. Conspiracy surrounding the AT&T service loss. Many say the world is ending. Isn't that bad? Their phone service goes down and like the world's ending. It's over. My phone just went down. That's how much they've made insecurity a thing. People are just totally insecure. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I put out this article, Leaving or Exit Trutherville, and we're talking about an ideological divide that needs to happen. And we're doing it for quality control purposes. And the best people of Trutherville, the truth seekers, will join us. They will. But they won't until they see the numbers. And it's because of the complacency, cowardice, the intimidation of going against the herd. Whatever it is, it's fine. We're going to fix that. There will be some who will cling to mainstream media approved trutherisms, but we're going to do some outgrouping. It'll happen organically as we gain traction and we continue engaging in even polarizing conversations. But there's going to come a time to choose between the emergent parallel media or remaining in alt media in Trutherville. Like I can tell you right now, the QAnoners aren't going to leave. They're addicted. But nothing is going to force the choice on its own. There's not going to be a self-cleansing. There's no internal skepticism. There's not going to be a purge without us. So the IPS, our objective here really is we are going to force that choice. We are going to make it so that it's impossible to avoid choosing between controlled opposition Trutherville or this new parallel media. And if you want to know more about this parallel media concept, go to parallelmedia.org. Parallelmedia.org. I'm working now on, the branding, the defining of this concept. What is the parallel media? Because the fake mainstream and the fake alternative constitute a world stage fictional universe. And to get everybody on the same sheet, I put what could be described as a short manifesto describing what we are, what this means, what we're doing with it. But it's based on drawing a line and standing on our own and recognizing that our platform, our position has the moral and intellectual high ground, that we are right, and we're going to stand on that. There's nothing wrong with being correct. The world is wrong. The world is deceived. We are less deceived than most people. That is just an objective fact. And we're continuing in this direction, but we're being held back and we're missing out on a large body of researchers who could be helping in this purification process. So we're not closing the doors. It's not a closed system, but we have to purify, quarantine, and then we will regroup and go back. So thanks everyone here for the comments, for the calls, and the participation. This is going to be a very interesting year. I have a lot of optimism about what's going to come of this. Because I don't think we were meant to exist. We're not, like, Neo. Neo was planned. He was part of the Matrix, some kind of quality control test or something. But no, we're not controlled opposition in any sense. We are very much, I think, outside their control, uncontrolled opposition. So anyway, this has been great. This is Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms, Auto Hoax. I'll put a link to this track in the newsletter. And of course, if you want to join us in Discord, I'm also going to put a link there as well. We're going to be there in the mornings. All right, thanks for the comments. I'll see you all later. Tomorrow, we'll be on with John LeBon and Fakeologist. So.
I'm on Auto Hoax, and it feels so good. You just auto believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, I ain't got time. I ain't got time, baby. my buddy and me. Telecommunications Act of 1996.
96, y'all.
Gonna filter your eyes and scrub your mind. The weatherman, he's just another bad joke. You can be a doomed little donkey like Eeyore. I'ma be an auto hoax, and it feels so good. You just ought to believe everything like I knew that you would. In my dream, you know I ain't got time, baby, for another crisis actor with soulless